Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Do You Expect Us to Talk? I'm your host, Becca Andrews, and joining me, as always, are the lovely Chris and Dave. How are you guys doing?
I'm feeling lovely, thank you.
I'm not feeling anything if it makes anyone feel more comfortable.
Yeah, I think I've just creeped all the listeners out just by saying that.
That's not creepy at all.
Oh, I must try harder then.
We've reached the end of our Bond movie reviews. Are you sad?
Yeah, I am. I'm excited we're moving on, but I've enjoyed this, and we are a pod podcast in everything we do. So I'm sad that I'm not going to be in that world for a while, but I'm sure a couple of weeks after I move on and we move on to other things, and our heads in something else, we'll really be enjoying it. But yeah, at the moment, this is kind of bittersweet.
Yeah, it's like an end of an era almost, and how long are we going for? Is it basically for about a year?
Well, we
Nearly?
recorded our first one last August. I don't know when we put it out because we had two or three in the can. I got a feeling we recorded early August and put it out later in August. So we've been going about 11 months. I don't expect... I would expect that... for example, Star Trek is about half this length, and I don't expect it to take half this long. I think it will be a bit less. But obviously, Chris has had a very, very busy year, and things have got in the way. But yeah, we've been at Bond for 11 months now.
And it's a bit weird. We're finally here. We've finally come to the point where we're listing out our favourites, our definitive list of our favourite Bond films in order.
This is going to be it now, isn't it? It's going to be it. I'm not going to change it anymore. This is the list.
You always come across these lists, particularly when like a new Bond film comes out. Say, the rankings of a Bond film listed by whoever or a certain website, and you kind of almost get angry. You think, no, you put License to Kill way down too low, or Majesty's isn't even the top 5. What the fuck are you doing? You know, or something like that, or just like and just over putting Skyfall above Majesty's and something ridiculous and things like that. So you just think, yeah, just little things like you think, oh, I get so annoyed. So.
I wouldn't say I'm nervous tonight at all, because I'm quite happy to say what I think. But I do think shows like this, they're a bit no-win, because we've got 25 films we're going to rank tonight. The sheer number of variations within that, plus the fact there's 3 of us, every single person who listens to this show is going to be pissed off at some point. Even if they broadly agree with, say, me, they're going to think, yeah, but you put that one too low or too high. How seriously they take it will vary, but I've never seen a Bond rankings list that match what I'm going to say tonight. Not because I'm wildly, off the wall with what I'm going to say, but just because there are so many variables.
It's all objective. Well, it's all subjective as well, isn't it? And it's like, well, see, with all us being so big like Bond fans, it's like, this is going to sound really sad, but it's like, these are my babies, and it's like I can't choose. But I'm going to do it anyway.
Oh, I know how you feel. I mean, we're going to get to. I think probably before we go into the rankings, we'll probably talk a little bit about our rationale behind how we rank them. But there's certainly one or two we'll get to that I'm like, oh shit, I can't put it higher than that. There's a few that I really wanted to put higher than I can. In terms of my rationale for ranking them, I've tried to balance quality, subjectively, my view on quality, with personal preference. And whilst I don't have 3 lists, I don't have, well, this is what it would be if it was personal preference, this is what it would be if it was purely quality. We will get to a couple of films in this ranking list where I'll say, well, if it was just quality, I'd be ranking this a little higher. Or if this was just personal preference, I'd be ranking this a little higher. I've really tried to balance it, but where things go a little bit lower than I'd like, it's whether I've got a genuine case for putting them higher than the things ahead of them. What about you, Chris?
Well, for me, it's kind of looking at lists. It's kind of similar to what you say. I mean, like, I think we can all kind of break up our lists into certain areas. We've got our top 5, and then and then we've got like the 6 to 10, which are kind of like the contenders for the top 5. You know, the ones that just missed out, that we kind of want to be there, but just about like miss the mark, so to speak. Then we kind of get to the middling ones, which are kind of like the ones we basically kind of like, but a bit more than the others. But they start varying down a little bit, but they all kind of have similar kind of stretches of quality, whether they're like really good, but just, you know, we just have other favourites, or we have like, yeah, we got like sort of something a bit cheesy and naff and a bit silly, but it's, you know, we always enjoy watching it, you know, and then even at the bottom end, I mean, I think we can all guess what our least favourite is. I'm guessing it's going to be the same. Well, actually, maybe not. But
no, Becca might be different.
Yeah,
actually, in a moment.
But
who knows?
But even then, it's like, well, how far do you really go? I mean, there's really really bad, but like, oh my god, it's so stupid. Or there's like, you know, there's so many different things where you can. It's hard to really judge. So I don't know. I've just kind of
we will explain our choices.
Yeah,
and we will. I think, you know, if we've ranked something where we genuinely believe it doesn't belong, but it's where we want to put it, we'll tell you that. Becca, what about your rankings? Have you gone on personal preference? Have you gone on quality? Have you tried to balance the two?
Yeah, I've tried to. It's a balancing act, really. It really is. I found it quite difficult. I think I tried to do it, I think, just after Spectre came out on one of the various Bond fan pages. And I kind of thought, oh, okay, I revisited that list. And then some of them are just wildly different. Like, so a few that I've kind of rewatched, just, you know, try and squeeze a bit more from them. And some of them I've enjoyed more, and some of them I thought, oh, okay, no, in terms of production quality, they're better films. But yeah, I've tried to kind of balance a thin line of what, you know, how they resonate with me personally. What I can get out of them, and generally in terms of their production qualities as well. So it's kind of somewhere in the middle, hopefully. There's some up there that I would kind of, that obviously maybe some films, like to any other our listeners, they might think, hold on a minute, you know, X is a much better film, blah, 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 blah. Why did she rank it so low? And I think, well, actually, because I think it's rubbish, or I enjoy Y a lot better, you know, a lot more. So, but yeah, I try a thin line between quality and personal enjoyment.
It is difficult. I mean, there are a couple of films, when we get to them, that I've ranked lower than what I believe to be their objective quality. But there are also a couple of films that I think are, in the public consciousness, a little bit overrated. So I've ranked them lower than I think most people would. And I just think, as I say, take it for what it is. It's three people giving you their opinion, their only opinions. Yeah, to each their own, and we've tried to be fair to these films as we've gone through, and we'll try to be fair to them as we rank them.
I will say this, regardless of how low some films may rank or how high I put them over other films, on some level I do love them all, because even like sort of like say the Naffos, like Roger Moore one, they have a sense of nostalgia that's still even say like a Pierce Brosnan one, or like a earlier or a later Connery or something. There is a sense of like it's Sunday afternoon, I'm 10, you know, sitting in front of the TV. It's kind of like a nostalgia warm blanket, even though I'm not saying that there are better films in the series than particular films. I still respect it. I would happily sit and watch it, you know. So
there is not a single film in this series that if I walked in and it was on, I would go switch that off. I would sit down and watch any of them.
That tells you something about the series, doesn't it? Or maybe it tells you something about us.
No, I mean, I've been quite brutal to two films in particular in this series. Well, three actually, but
one of them's Justified, though.
Well, I would say two of them are justified.
Two of them are justified, yeah.
The one that isn't, I'll admit when I get there. But the fact is, I've been quite harsh on them, but that's watching with a critical eye. There's not a Bond film I can't watch as background.
Yeah, so it's cinematic comfort food, isn't it, as we said before?
I think we ought to talk about the Bond films sequentially.
On you bunch of rankers, let's get on with it.
Let me have a quick rank first.
I was seeing Tommy's joke there. Sorry about that. Thanks, Tommy.
We're going to hand over to Chris because Chris used to present before the Cinematronics podcast. You used to present the Top 5 show, and you used to get people on your shows. How I first heard you, actually. You used to have people on ranking their top 5 films.
Yeah.
So Chris is going to shepherd us through this.
Okay.
In however he wants to, in whatever order he wants to.
Da, 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 da.
I was tempted to use the Pearl music for that, so, let's do things. Chris, we're in your hands, not literally. That would be wrong.
Good evening, pot pickers. No, I'm kidding. So there's 25 Bond films. So we're gonna start from bottom to top. I'm gonna go to Becca. What is your least favourite Bond film?
And
well, surprise. At number 25, it's Die Another Day. Oh, quelle surprise. Yeah, it's not even so bad.
I can't even
good.
act shocked, really. But anyway, go
It's
on.
just, yeah, it's like, not even so bad it's good. It's just, it's so bad it's bad. It's like, yep, there are some enjoyable aspects, but this is just rubbish.
Yeah, it is kind of like for most Bond fans, the worst Bond film ever made. In their eyes. Do you agree, Dave?
Yes and no. In that I haven't put it last, but I do think it's objectively the worst film in the series. But I can't disagree with Becca. Only except that I have.
Okay, well, it's not really much more to say. It died of. I mean, it's not my bottom. It's not my least favourite film, but
okay. I guess we better move on to mine then.
So, okay.
I think I can guess what it's going to be.
I don't think it's objectively necessarily the worst film in the series, but what it screams is tiredness. Die Another Day, and when we get to it, I don't want to talk too much about it now because I'll talk about it when we get to it.
Number 24.
Or when I get to it. It's not at number 24.
Oh, God, that's too high.
Hang on, we'll get to it. But Die Another Day is made with enthusiasm. And the film I've put last has no enthusiasm or life in it. The Bond actor in it is often accused of phoning in. And I don't agree. I think he made an effort. But I think his feelings about the role came through. And hence he ended up playing it as a misanthrope. I think the lines in it are very weak. I think it looks very cheap and tacky. And very little in it makes any sense. So whilst it's not objectively the worst in the series, I had the most miserable time with Diamonds Are Forever.
Oh.
I can concur that is my least favourite Bond film I have on the list. I agree with everything that Dave said to a minor extent. I just thought it was kind of really dull and ugly looking. Connery's worst performance. He felt like he didn't give a shit. Don't think anyone really gave a shit at that time. It's just a bit of a misstep as well. It just fails on most levels. It doesn't even have a good way to sort of wave off a villain like Blofeld. It's just such a missed opportunity. Not even I'll get you next time. It just felt like, what? So is he dead? What?
We don't know.
Yeah. It's just that wasn't really well done.
And I think I think elements of this film are a bit Marmite as well, and Blofeld's one of them. I really don't like Charles Gray as Blofeld, but I fully respect why Becca does, because he is kind of a camp take on it, which I can imagine people liking, but it's just another misstep, and a little bit like when we get to Skyfall and Spectre later. Regardless of what you think of the film that preceded them, they're a course correction we didn't need.
Yeah, I think the thing with Charles Gray, I think it doesn't really matter if it's if he plays him camper than you like. So if it works within the film, you get away with it. But I don't think the film does enough to get that mark. So it doesn't sort of do enough to make you even care. It's just oh right, great. I do enjoy Charles Gray in it anyway. They'll put my critical eye and say, well, it's not my favourite Blofeld, but as a villain performance, I have no problem. but it's just again the handling, the plotting as probably the least likable Bond girl in it as well. Yeah. And completely fucking useless. And
well, that won't be the last time we say that tonight.
Oh.
Apart from Stacey.
Yeah. But I just didn't have... There's only 2 films in this series that I never really have any fun with. And they are my bottom 2, regardless of their objective qualities. I found this quite miserable when we reviewed it. And it actually ended up generating a really good show. I mean, Diamonds Are Forever, if you haven't heard it, listeners, it is one of our very best shows because we ripped the piss out of it because there's no logic in this film at all.
I recommend listening to our On Her Majesty's podcast before that because it's like a really nice sort of bookend because it makes sense of like how much we love On Her Majesty's Secret Service to just how much we fucking hate it. Diamonds because it's such absolutely. A drop in like. So Becca, what's your number 24?
Number 24. Purely because it's not a real Eon Bond movie. It's never seen ever again. It's nothing against like the quality of the film. Connery is clearly having a much better time than as he did actually as Bond. But it's just because it's not a real Eon movie, and therefore it is ranked slightly higher than Die Another Day. And that is all I have to say.
No, but I understand that because he still has the warm comforts. So you say like sort of Diamonds Are Forever. I don't know where it is on your list. Obviously, it's higher.
Find out in a moment.
I'm a little bit concerned. It's
coming soon. I'll be surprised how soon it comes.
But it still has like sort of the bonding joke, like the gun barrel and little sort of touches, and plus you really do like the Charles Gray's Blofeld, and there's so there are things in it. I can see. Okay, that's fine.
Like my top 5, for example. Well, spoiler alert. There'll be kind of
Don't say.
No, that's it. But it's going to be wildly different. Like my top 5, the ones that I think are sort of classics that I enjoy watching, and I get find something new out every single time. Whereas like my bottom 5 or something, for example, are just ones that I perhaps don't enjoy so much. I mean, they may have amazing production qualities, or just perhaps I'm kind of thinking they're a bit silly, or they just kind of don't really fit. They're tonally all over the place, production issues along the way, things like that. But Never Say Never Again, there's so much fun to be had in that movie. I mean, Fatima Blush is like one of the best Bond girls outside of the franchise, just purely by the outrageous costumes that she wears.
Well, it's fair. There's only one film outside the franchise.
Well, that's it, exactly. But it's just like
and
Connery's having a good time, and it's funny, and there's locations are looking gorgeous. But it's not an Eon film, and I'm begrudgingly counting it in this list.
Okay, fair enough.
Because it's an Eon movie, damn,
Fair enough.
That's my reason. It's a very selfish one, but it's not a real Bond movie.
David?
Damn it, there's no real Bond.
Yeah, there are a few on my list that don't deserve to be where they are, and I will freely admit it. And I make no apologies for it, because I hate it. And I know some of you think it's overrated and underrated and all the rest of it. The fact is, there are 2 films in this series I have never had any sort of good time with at all. My number 24, unsurprisingly, is Octopussy.
Horror.
Whilst, obviously all of the other Roger Moore films are above this, and I'll explain why when we get there. But Octopussy isn't worthless, and I do want to say that it has decent set pieces, decent action, decent locations, but you've got a man who's way too old, and they've partnered him with a guy who's not only way too young, but not an actor. And I just get bored with it. And if you said to me now, can you tell me what happened in Octopussy? I'd kind of lose the plot about halfway through.
I think it happened in review.
I get bored.
One goes to India, and I can't remember the rest.
In its defence, the backgammon scene's very good. And Property of a Lady sequence at the auction's really good too. And whilst people point out the action sequences are good, and I would concur, you still have really great stunt work, but it's too different. The leading man and the guy that's replacing him, it's now getting laughable. I'm largely bored during this film. I think some of it might be it's not been fantastically well restored compared to some of the films. It feels a bit drab to me. But the fact is, I will freely admit Octopussy deserves to be higher. What I won't admit is that it deserves to be high. I still think it's a really piss poor Bond film. And it was quite interesting recently because we're friends with Norman Wanstall, who won an Oscar for Goldfinger, on Facebook, and he watched Octopussy for the first time recently, and he was rather disgusted by it.
Yeah, he wasn't a fan, was he?
He was totally like, that is not Ian Fleming's James Bond at all. And that, as a bottom line, is where I am. We will, maybe we'll talk about favourite Bonds as we go through, but my biggest problem with Roger Moore, particularly as he got old, is at not one point in the series, even at his most brutal, did I think this guy could kill me. And Octopussy is an old man in a film. So I've kind of apologised for where it is, but by the same token, I can't apologise at all. I really don't like this film. My bottom 5 are all poor, but this and Diamonds are the 2 films in the series I've never got any enjoyment out of.
My number 24. It's one of the films that actually surprised me that it's this slow, and it comes to the point where, like, I think when it comes to my listings, there's like a certain box, and all like kind of try and contend to like which one I get more enjoyment out of, which one I think will flow better, have these sort of problems. And with all due respect, I think my number 24 is Man with the Golden Gun. And, and again, I go back to what I said at the beginning. It's not that I hate this film, at all, it just, I think it's just a bit of a mess. It's just a bit all over the place, Bond, like has a bullet sent to him, and then he has to go and find another bullet to, I don't know, for no reason whatsoever. And it's just, I think it's Roger Moore trying to find his feet as Bond, but it's just a little bit too messy. It has a good villain, but it's a wasted opportunity, and it does sag in the middle. It's a film. It's a Bond film that could have been great, but it just isn't. So, with all due respect, I think Man with the Golden Gun is my number 24. I think we're all shocked and all thinking, where's...
Well, no, we're not, because I will take up the baton and start the number 23s then. My number 23 is The Man with the Golden Gun, because I really had when I came to rank them, there's a slight gap, but I was really debating when it just came to the Roger Moore films, forget the series as a whole, whether I was going to put this above or below A View to a Kill. Now, my first gut reaction, and I think I say it on the show, or one of the shows, was to say The Man with the Golden Gun, because you've got a younger Roger Moore, you've got Scaramanga, who's one of the iconic villains of the series, and Nick Nack, who you could argue is one of the iconic henchmen in some respects. But the problem with The Man with the Golden Gun is, again, it takes some lovely locations and make them look incredibly drab. You've got the late Guy Hamilton, and I feel bad saying about this, about somebody who died this year, but some of his work on this film was rather sloppy. The score's not very good, whereas The View to a Kill score's lovely. The cinematography in A View to a Kill's lovely. You got the Dream Team in A View to a Kill.
Good old Dream Team.
There are lots of things, but the single biggest problem with this film is it's confused. You've got this Solex agitator plot, which they just needed to drop completely and focus on Bond versus like his nemesis and make something of that. And the fact is, I don't hate this film like I hate my bottom 2, but The Man with the Golden Gun largely bores me, and it's in the real ugliest part of the 70s in terms of the way people are dressed and everything else. And so I really couldn't put it any higher than this. So my number 23 is The Man with the Golden Gun.
Yeah, you feel like you have like better memories of it as a child, but when you rewatch it, it's kind of disappointing.
Well, when you think my nostalgia plays into it, and The Man with the Golden Gun was my first Bond film, you think the goodwill of that would shoot it up the charts a bit. It is a signal. It is a sign of how much it wastes its premise. But the worst thing about it, apart from everything I've just said, is that everyone goes, "Oh, Scaramanga," and they're right. But watch the film again. He's hardly in it.
And he should be in it more. He should be. It is a waste opportunity.
I wish there was like a director's cut somewhere with more Christopher Lee in it.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there might be a recut of this film that's really good, but
There's probably some footage that got lost on the cutting room
we
floor.
may never see it now. But yeah,
we'll never see it reach the light of day.
It's boring, and a Bond film should never be boring.
Just for a change of pace, my number 23 is Diamonds Are Forever.
Well, I'm just relieved you've got it because I mean, this is Roger Moore's favourite Bond film.
Oh dear, poor old Rog. Sorry, Rog, if you're listening. With
the Queen and Samuel L. Jackson and, and Murray Walker and Riddick Bowe and Michael Aspel.
Michael Aspel, wow. How about that? Yeah. Oh dear. What can I say? Yeah, just reasons we said already. I mean, Connery's pretty much phoning it in. It's just all of it. It's fun. It's camp. It's whatever you want to call it. It's just ridiculous. And it's high silliness from beginning to end, and it's not. Well, as we were saying previously, it's not what Ian Fleming's Bond is all about, really. This is, similar way to you feel, Dave, about Roger in Octopussy. This man isn't going to kill you. I don't kind of think that. If you compare Sean Connery for like how vital he is in Dr. No, for example, just the vitality that exudes from him, coming out to Diamonds, you just think, he doesn't give a shit.
See, I've never quite agreed with that. I respect your opinion because a lot of people say that. My problem isn't Connery not making an effort. It's more the fact for me that not only does he not look the part anymore, which is really shocking for a 41-year-old man, but it's also the fact that his feelings about the character and the role are bleeding through into the performance, even though he's perfectly present in all the scenes. So he's making an effort.
He gets all the T's and crosses all dots all the I's and crosses all the T's.
Yeah,
is it a sense that he's like beneath this now?
I don't
know.
He's
over it.
Oh, sorry, so he's above it. Yeah.
But the film is tonally really confused, Becca. I mean, didn't you feel?
Yeah, it's all over the place. I mean, Charles Gray's it's fun to watch. Generally, as an actor, he's fun to watch. He's sort of one of the highlights in Twice, for example, when he pops up as Dickie Henderson, even though it's very short-lived. But it's just it's no threat. Meant to be one of Bond. He's basically an arch nemesis, and you stick him in a wig and a ridiculous hat, and there's just no threat to him whatsoever. It's just no point. And he's kind of being dangled in his bathtub at the end. It's like, what the hell? How do you sort of employ these people?
God damn it, man!
That's up, not down. Oh dear, it's just ridiculousness, and I just can't. I'm just going to spew more hate upon it. I just can't say anymore. So anyway, that's my number 23.
What about yours, Chris?
My number 23 is Never Say Never Again. It's fine. I have no problem with Never Say Never Again, apart from the few things that we discussed on the podcast, such as the score but I think. There are certain things I like. I do like the villain performance. I like how Connery's kind of seems to be giving a shit after the Diamonds Are Forever. But I kind of know what Becca is saying when it just doesn't feel like a Bond film. It's like a Bond film, but it's just missing the mark, so to speak. It feels more much like what's the right way? It kind of feels like it tries too hard when it blatantly isn't. It's trying to pull the wool under your eyes, saying, "Look, we're a Bond film. We're a Bond film." When you're not really a Bond film, you're just trying to be a Bond film. Really, really bad. But that said, it flows fine. I have no problem watching it. It's a decent watch with a good, as Becca's just mentioned before. It's got a good villainess in the role as well, in the form of Fatima Bush. So, my number 23 is Never Say Never Again.
I can't really argue with that. I mean, obviously, by default, I've been left with Never Say Never Again in the highest position of the three of us. But we've all done our bottom threes now, and I don't think any of us have got any real shockers in there. The closest is Octopussy, because I don't think many people would put it bottom three. But frankly,
I was quite surprised that you ranked it higher. To be honest,
we're not looking at a Hall of Fame with any of these films.
Definitely not. So, right, so we're moving on to what, number 22?
a lot of people are going to lynch me, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it anyway. My number 22 is Quantum of Solace.
I don't think many people would. I think a lot of people would kind of like agree with you.
I think Chris and I are actually the people that they'll go, what?
Yes.
What the bloody hell? Yeah, it's just. Meh.
Well, try argue with that.
Well, allow me to retort.
Meh. No, it's kind of like. Okay, so when I went to see this film upon release, left the cinema, I'm thinking, I think I enjoyed that. I'm not too sure. And then obviously rewatched it again, through the years, and I was like, oh, actually, no, this is better. This is better. I enjoyed this a little bit more. I appreciate the plotting a bit more, but it's still it's a bit meh. It's kind of like the difficult, third album or like Middle Child. It's just like, oh, a bit meh is how I describe it. Even though it has really sharp action scenes, and it's the shortest of all the movies, which just goes to show how good the editing really is. But it's just it doesn't really tick all these boxes for me, and it leaves a lot to be desired. But anyhow, that's at my 22 position.
My number 22 is the worst film in the series, objectively speaking, but again, I'm trying to balance it with enjoyment, and at this point in the chart, none of them are particularly enjoyable. But I don't fall asleep during this film. I think everyone is trying their best. I think it's just wrong-headed. So it's the worst film in the series, but there are three films I enjoy less. So I'm not going to say a lot about it because I ranted twice in 2 different episodes. My number 22 is Die Another Day.
Yeah, it's
That's too high for me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's got a bit of a nosebleed being that high.
I mean,
the slap from Chris.
One of the things you could say about it is never boring.
No, it isn't.
It's always fun.
That's exactly the point. No one is going to pretend it's a good film. Chris, even if Chris puts it at number 2.
It certainly is a number 2.
But the fact,
yeah, it's a number 2.
But the fact that everything objectively about the film is worse than almost any other element of any other Bond film. But it whips along okay. So it's wrong-headed, but it's very committed in its wrong-headedness. And in a strange kind of way, I respect that over and above Octopussy, for example, which is objectively a far better film, but you're making a lazy film with an elderly man. And Diamonds Are Forever, where you're trying to recapture what you did years before, but it's not there anymore. Everyone, aside from Brosnan, who's a little bit too old here, is kind of at the top of their game. It's just that the game they're playing's rubbish. So, yeah, Die Another Day is my number 22. What about you, Chris?
Okay, my number 22, and again, I've kind of put my previous 23 even further now. But it's Octopussy.
I just think all I would say before you defend the choice, Chris, is that surprises me because you defended it quite strongly against me in review.
Yeah,
that surprised me a little bit as well, actually.
And I go back to what I said about it does sound pretty bad, but every one of these films I still kind of enjoy. I do still enjoy going back and watching this, and I still get a kick out. But I understand with what you mean in terms of it's baggy, it's a bit naff, it's a bit ill-judged. Roger Moore's way too old in the role. But there's just what I like are like certain moments, certain set pieces, certain scenes that I attach myself to. But as a film, it's a bit all over the place. So when it comes to like the bottom end of the Bond films, I kind of have to go with like flow, consistency, and enjoyment. And so that's it. Again, it's like Golden Gun. I kind of didn't really want to put it as low as it is, but by default, it's there. So number 21, Becca.
Oh dear, I have Tomorrow Never Dies. So yeah, shoot 'em up Bond, pretty much. It's fine as an action movie. As a Bond film, perhaps not so much. So it's the first one that I saw at the cinema.
So
I thought that would give it some goodwill. Actually,
Yeah.
I thought it would be a little bit higher on that basis.
No, it doesn't.
Alright.
Yeah, no, it surprises me actually. I kind of thought, oh, maybe I thought I'd rank it higher, but no. It's a kind of it's just typical 90s shoot 'em up Bond movie. And there are kind of so other earlier films that I would rank above it, which I'm going to do. But yeah, so that's my number 21 spot. Sadly, not even the great John Price could save it.
The great John Price. Okay, we'll talk more about that when I get to where I ranked it. My number 21 is the last, I think, bad film in the series. I think where, regardless of whether you enjoy it or not, on an objective level, there isn't very much to recommend it. A lot of people defend it on the basis of the villain. And I think if you take the name of the actor playing the villain, you're probably right. But in terms of the way he's used and the deployment of him, very weak. We've now got a very elderly man in the role. We've got one of the worst Bond girls in the entire series. We've got a henchman that's very Marmite. I can't stand her. It's rescued from being in the bottom 2 or 3 by a wonderful score, some wonderful cinematography, and whilst I don't think it's Christopher Walken's best performance, and he is in the negative column in some respects, he's better than some of the things below him. So my number 21, surprisingly, only the 3rd worst Roger Moore film on my list.
Only?
But it does tell you 3 of the bottom 5 are Roger Moore. My number 21 is A View to a Kill.
And taking that is also my number 21 as well. And I absolutely agree with everything that Dave said. I think originally it was a bit lower because I was considering it in terms of like evenly paced. It's like it was a bit boring last time I watched it. The title sequence is just like so naff. What the fuck? I think it just wasn't as fun as I remember it being. But when I watched it recently, and when Dave mentioned the score, I was like, you know what? It is one of John Barry's better. I say better as if it's like he doesn't do that great. It's one of my favourite John Barry scores for the Bond series, and I think it carries it through. I think there's a certain element of what the fuck. It's like it's a little bit of like Roger Moore versus Christopher Walken. That is like a juxtaposition of like okay, and it still carries through. It isn't a good film by any stretch of the mark, but what the hey, if it's on TV, I'm happily just to bang it on and watch it. It's it runs okay,
And of course, you can't understate it. We joke about it. We've had a lot of laughs about it, but the camaraderie between those two is a real plus point. I mean, it's not much of the film, so I don't want to overstate it, all joking aside. But the fact is, they have really good camaraderie.
They make a really good double act, don't they?
It's one of the things that puts it over Octopussy for me. I mean, there's lots of things that put it over Octopussy, but one of them is Bond's sidekick in Octopussy is decades younger than him, not an actor, really self-conscious, lots of silly tennis jokes. The guy who's his sidekick in this film is the same generation of him. They're 5 or 6 as him. They're 5 or 6 years apart in age, and they have a natural and easy camaraderie, and it does boost the film.
It's more believable than VJ Armitage, isn't it, I think?
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, the iconic henchman is a Big Ron from EastEnders. Is that right?
Exactly.
Not a big one.
Yeah, that's the hardest guy you want to put up against Roger Moore at that point.
You really didn't know you were in a Bond movie, Big Ron from EastEnders.
It's not a good film, and I'm sorry to sort of damn it with faint praise, but like 21 out of a 25 film series, given its reputation, isn't actually too bad.
It's not too bad. Anyway, so now we get to number 20. Becca, what's your number 20?
Yeah, we got Pierce Brosnan again in The World Is Not Enough.
Yeah. I think you're in line with popular opinion, but I think Chris and I are both like, what? Come on. Right.
Mine's kind of more like populist, but then
Explain
the middle...
yourself, woman.
Oh, well, it's kind of these difficult, like the middling ones. I call.
Well, it's not middling if it's 20th out of 25.
Well, no, I'm just saying like the middling ones are kind of, I don't know, say like 11 to 15 or whatever. They're quite easy to explain because it's kind of like obviously bits you like, bits you don't like. But these kind of ones, as you're kind of getting out of the doldrums and everything, you just think, really. I mean, it's too long for me. I think even like obviously it's got the longest pre-title sequence, which is probably one of the best pre-title sequences we've ever had in the whole entire series. For the whole like 13-14 minutes, you grip from start to end. And then after kind of like probably about the halfway point of the film, it starts to fall apart. And Christmas Jones, Jesus Christ, just I think there's like three really awful Bond films. So like Tiffany Case and Bloody Stacey.
I can see why Christmas Jones would kind of like send it. Her presence alone does like take it down a ranking a notch, doesn't it? A little bit.
Like you just goes down completely. Just
when you think about it, Daniel Craig was nominated for Best Actor at the BAFTAs. The Casino Royale came out, and I think Casino Royale was nominated for Best British Film. I can't remember exactly. If this film had been nominated for any top film awards, we'd have all laughed our asses off. They weren't kind of taken very seriously in this era. Admittedly.
Yeah.
I think maybe for sort of some technical ones, I think maybe some like sound or
that's
effects,
always
that sort
been
of things.
top notch in all of the Bond films, yeah.
But in terms of it's not kind of like classical filmmaking by any stretch of the imagination. But I mean, plot-wise, it's fine. I do think that I do think Robert Carlyle phones it in a little bit. But then again, he's not really main villain.
Yeah, I don't think he gets enough to do really. I think that's the
No,
only
he doesn't.
problem.
It really works against him. But I must say, obviously, it's got one of the best twists in the Bond series, and it's really Sophie Marceau who puts in a brilliant turn, and it's shocking when Bond kills her in cold blood. It's one of the few moments where you think, oh my god, Brosnan's actually lethal. But yeah, it does. I enjoyed it, but it's not like a great Bond movie, and that's why it's at my number 20 spot.
Okay. All right, Dave, what's your number 20?
My number 20 is Never Say Never Again. I won't say too much about it because, again, I think it's one of those things I said everything I needed to say about at the time. It isn't a proper Bond film. It is very flawed. You can tell it's a script made up on the fly, but it looks kind of nice, and it's got one of Sean Connery's better performances, and I didn't recognise that until this time. I'm not bored by it until the final quarter of the film. It isn't a proper Bond film, but the bottom 5 are all films I don't like very much. Not as much as, say, the bottom 3, but yeah, there are problems with all of them. This is deeply flawed, but I don't hate it. So my number 20 is Never Say Never Again.
Okay, well, my number 20, you'll be all pleased to hear, is Die Another Day.
That's too high, Chris. That's too high.
I bet you...
Because the way he was saying it's got no right to be that high, I genuinely thought that was the one that was in the top 10 or something.
I bet you're all relieved to go, oh, for God's sake. Like,
you put it where you want to put it, but to be fair, you've only put it 2 places below me. So,
well, yeah. I mean, look, it is. I can't disagree with you guys too much, and I generally agree. But when I looked at the list, I kind of have to go with what Dave's already acknowledged. It flows really well. I can stick it at any time. And I'll be honest, I kind of almost went with my gut and my heart a little bit, because when I'm doing these lists, I go with kind of like what the status quo is, what the sort of like, is it a better film, like critically, and just kind of like what my heart sings, like what do I literally just rather just put on and watch. And to be honest, I don't really ever have a bad time with Die Another Day. It's flawed, it's shit, bad CGI, bad everything else, but you know what? Fuck, I enjoy the fuck out of it, so it's number 20. There you go.
Fair enough.
So yeah, that's my justification. It was like, fuck.
We're inside the top 20 now, we're getting nosebleeds.
Nosebleeds. Oh dear.
We're getting to the real quality.
Yeah.
I think we'll save that for number 10 and upwards, I think.
Right, so Becca, what's your number 19?
Oh dear. My number 19 is A View to a Kill. I think we've pretty much said all we want to say about it already. I think the Dream Team kind of elevate it a bit higher than yourselves, Dave, for example. I love Crystal Walken in it. Is the highlight of the movie. Yes, Roger's too old, and even that he himself admitted that he was too old. And I can't express how useless Stacey is. Oh my god, she looks good, but she's good useless.
James,
shut up. Plot-wise, I think it's incredible. San Francisco looks amazing. Beautiful cinematography. Some action scenes are a little bit ridiculous. Beautiful score. It's one of my favourite Barry scores, actually. I love the kind of more when you arrive in San Francisco, it's kind of quite relaxing to listen to because you've got a mix of kind of like strings. It's just nice to put on and have a nice bath to or something like that. It's quite relaxing to listen to. But I just think Roger's age just kind of brings it down for me a little bit. He's too old by this point, and that kind of spoils it, to be honest. So yeah, that's it. It's my number 19 spot.
My number 19 went the only time I've ever... This is one of the biggest drops this time. Because I always thought by definition this film belonged somewhere in the middle. Because it's so by numbers. But the fact is, most of the things ahead of it are either better films or they have something iconic about them. And whilst there's one sequence in this film that people tend to remember, it's so fucking bland. It tries to pull emotional heartstrings with us, but fails, largely because they cast a fucking terrible secondary Bond girl. I know Becca might disagree with me, but I honestly think it's one of the worst villains in the entire series. And whilst it's slightly elevated by a better lead Bond performance than his first attempt, it's not a bad film, and that it's only in the flaw because it is so bland. My number 19 is Tomorrow Never Dies.
My number 19 is Moonraker. And it's funny that Moonraker comes just after Die Another Day, because I've always said Die Another Day is basically the new version of Moonraker in terms of, like, it's so batshit crazy. You know, what the fuck were they thinking? But when you actually watch Moonraker, what I think puts it...
It's nowhere near as daft as Die Another Day.
No, it's not. It's actually pretty straight. It's only when, literally, like, the last set piece when they actually go to space is when it goes a little bit... Okay.
From scene to scene, I mean, if you pick the highlights up, yes, he went to space, and yes, there's a double-taken pigeon. But from scene to scene... I mean, you can switch on any part of Die Another Day and go, what the fuck?
Yeah.
What the hell's going on?
You can't really do that with Moonraker. It's not that bad.
Yeah.
To be fair, it was a product of its time as well. I mean, you've got like Star Wars and other kind of movies themed around that as well. So it's a real product of its time. Yeah. I think.
But I like Roger, and I'm looking at the film ahead of it, thinking I should have put it below. But I've said it now, so I've committed. But it isn't as bad as its reputation says. So it's my number 19. What's everyone's 18?
I'll go first on this, just to follow up from you, because my number 18 is Moonraker. I said when we talked about this very recently, pleasant surprises in the series. And I named Moonraker, and so it would be very easy to look at it and go, well, pleasant surprise, and you still stuck it in the bottom, quarter. Just above the bottom quarter. Well, yeah, it's not a very good film, but Moonraker tends to have to fight its way out of the bottom 1 or 2 with most people. It's normally down there with, like, A View to a Kill and Die Another Day, and maybe Never Say Never Again if you were going to count it. They are the ones that traditionally fight out the bottom slot. And the fact is, we're going to get to its stablemate very soon, for me anyway. A film that's ranked as one of the classics of the series. Moonraker's not bad at all. It's got one of the best M sequences in the entire film. It's got some of the most... Someone warned me at the outset of this series. They said, Moonraker's beautiful. And they're right, it's gorgeous. I mean, it's lovely to look at. Venice is in a lot of films in this series, and it's never been shot more attractively than in this film.
It's got a good villain.
It's got a very good villain, and again, you watch it as a kid, he looks really bland. You watch him as an adult, he's very good.
He has the best lines in the whole series, I think.
Jaws isn't as good as he was in the first film, because he's played good and a bit sillier and all the rest of it. Having said that, he's quite vampiric in that sort of parade sequence.
Yeah.
There's some lovely stuff in Rio. I think Roger looks better than he did in the last couple of films, despite the fact that he's aging. It's not a good film. Let's not pretend it is, but it's gorgeous to look at. It's got a beautiful score, and it's nowhere near as bad as its reputation. So I'm actually, whilst it sounds like damning with faint praise because it's still 18th, I'm quite pleased to be able to put Moonraker this high. There are 7 films below it. So at number 18 for me is Moonraker.
Number 18, it's Scaramanga himself, The Man with the Golden Gun, is at my number 18 spot. Even though he's not in it for very long. The film's about him, but we don't see him till the latter part of the film.
He does have a very powerful weapon.
He does, but then he charges $1 million a shot, you see. It's a very expensive man. Raise my eyebrow there.
Again, I will knock one out for a $5 if anyone's interested.
At the other end of the pay scale, it's Dave. No, I think just by being in this film, I mean, it is... conversely to what you might think, Dave, some of the locations I think they're really stunning. As to, Thailand, the James Bond Island is kind of one of my places, top 5 to visit in the world.
Oh, I'd love to go there, Becca. Don't get me wrong on their choice of locations. I just think they've made quite a flat-looking film out of such beautiful places.
Sure, definitely. Lulu's score, I think, is great fun. It's a bit cheesy, sort of very camp it up. It's got some great sort of cheesy guitar in there. But it's good fun. It doesn't take itself too seriously. But yeah, Christopher Lee elevates it purely by his presence. He's just one of the greatest human beings who ever lived, I think, to be honest. His military career, his acting career.
I will argue against, and I didn't say it when I gave it my official ranking before, but it does have one of the worst Bond girls in the series. She's most useless, annoying, and kind of offensive, really. If you want to, like, in terms of sexual politics, she's kind of very, like,
It's embarrassing.
Yeah,
it is a little bit embarrassing.
And the other thing is, and it doesn't reflect well on, I say the producers, Harry Saltzman. Harry Saltzman had seen her in The Wicker Man and hired her. And of course, there's 2 things about The Wicker Man. Firstly, she was pregnant when she shot it. So even her breasts in it are swollen by that. But when you see her from the rear in The Wicker Man, it's a body double. So I think he hired Britt Ekland on the fact that he thought she was gorgeous and had a wonderful body.
And she was dubbed as well.
And she turned up a lot slimmer than he was expecting and a lot more athletic as a build. And he was like pissed off with it. And I just think the whole casting of Britt Ekland is not a great reflection on our gender, Chris.
No, I think she was like grossly underused for that reason as well. As if you kind of thought, oh, this isn't what I ordered, and thought, right, okay, I don't mean that in a horrible way.
I mean, the whole end of the film is her bending over,
pressing buttons with her bum.
It's piss poor. She's not good.
And Roger just treats her like it's just like an annoying thing. It's like, oh, good night.
Yeah, he treats her like a slow child. I said that during the review, that the Roger Moore era doesn't treat the women well.
It's the 70s. It's like prior to Women's Lib, but it's like it's similar to like Tim Dalton and Cara, Miriam Dabo. It's kind of just there to be annoyed. But I just kind of think, it starts off with her kind of trying to be strong and not sort of reject his advances, but be like, oh, okay, I'm an independent woman, rah, rah, rah. And then he just capitulates entirely. And it's just like, oh, what the bloody hell. But she's glamorous all the same. That's memorable villain. I think Netflix, as I say, very memorable, great locations. I quite like the score, but everything else is just ridiculous. And it's kind of with this agitator. It's like plot du jour. I mean, it was a sort of energy crisis was very real in the 70s.
Yeah, this is one of. The previous film was pretty bad because of blaxploitation. But this is the series where you just think, cram in what's the thing of the day. What do you put at 18, Chris?
Spectre. I'll be the first to put Spectre at number 18. It's a very good looking film. Craig is always good as Bond. I like the cast. I think the first 2/3 of the film are run perfectly fine. I think it's very enjoyable. It's got a good henchman, which I think is potentially wasted. It's got a good Bond girl, even though they wasted the potential there in terms of building up the love story. But I think as a character and the actress they chose was good, relatively speaking. I think the score's pretty nice. I think it's very easy watching. But what lets it down is it's just quite unremarkable. And for God's sake, that old blooming Blofeld thing! Oh my God!
Worst twist in movie history. Oh Jesus.
Well, yeah, until we get to Star Trek.
Yeah.
But no, it's pretty bog standard, really, Spectre, and what makes it even worse, I'm sounding like it's, like bottom five, but no, but what lets it down is that stupid plot twist. Just like Matt was just not bothered with Blofeld at all, or just stick with guns and having Blofeld from the start, and not having be his fucking foster brother from years ago who thought he was dead. Because, did they see Goldmember? Seriously.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my number 18, Spectre. So
Okay.
with that, what's everyone's number 17? I'm looking at my 17 going, oh, this is going to piss people off. But go on.
Oh no.
What's
Are you regretting it already?
No. I'm sticking with my guns in this. I'm gleefully looking at number 17 thinking.
So what have you put there, Becca?
I got Octopussy at number 17. That will surprise people. No, not really.
Why would it surprise people? What should it be? Fucking sick?
No, I just thought obviously, Davey famously hated it so much.
I think objectively it probably belongs somewhere around where you're putting it. But the fact is, it's a bottom quarter or so Bond film.
Oh, exactly.
People who defend it tend to sort of go, oh, it's underrated, which is damning with faint praise. They're trying to say, well, I like Roger Moore, therefore, and trying to say some nice things about it. The fact is, it's an old man in a very safe film.
It's like when I tried to defend it with you, Dave, and go, oh, come on, it's not that bad. It's...
Exactly.
That's
That's
good
the
bit.
defense.
Come on.
But it's not that bad. Doesn't put it up with From Russia With Love, does it?
No.
The fact is, it's an old man twatting around with Tarzan rods and tennis jokes. It's crap.
It tries to be like it's basically what like Few Eyes Only really really is. It's kind of like a post era.
Except one's quite good.
Except one's better, yeah. It's kind of part adventure movie, part like Cold War, sort of spy thriller, really.
Part old man on the left.
Part old man pissing around Europe and going to India. No, it's I enjoy it. I didn't hate it quite as much as you. There's good bits to be had. It's a suave.
Nobody hates it as much as me, because to be honest, if it was just favourites, it would have gone bottom.
Yeah.
It only stayed off the bottom because I cannot objectively put it below Diamonds. I can. It has the set pieces. It has positive things about it. It's not all bad, but I just don't enjoy it. I think it's really fucking boring for a start.
I think there's plenty of fun times to be had. But yeah, as I was saying, it's basically a good old suave off between Louis Jourdan and Rog, as to who can look the most stylish and who can out suave each other.
I enjoy the Knife Twins.
Yeah, they're really good, aren't they? Micho and Grishka. They're quite entertaining to watch, and the plot with the Fabergé egg as well, and the references to the original Fleming novel. I think it's really nice. But it's just what happens when they, it's kind of all the warning signs of when you try to stretch like a short story out to a 2-hour-long film. This is how not to do it. But anyway, so yeah, that's what's pursuit at number 17 for me.
My number 17 is, I think, a fairly controversial one in that I know people who really love this film. But again, we've just done a Lewis Goupert film. We've just done his last one. I'm going to put his first one next. At number 17 for me is You Only Live Twice.
Oh, wow. That's pretty...
Well, I don't necessarily think it's that bad, and I had a reasonable time with it. I can't justify putting it ahead of much that's ahead of it. You can argue over one or two of them, that's fine. And I'm sure there are, even 2 or 3 that you'd go, well, surely it's better than that, surely it's better than that. But the majority of them that are ahead of them, the majority of films that are ahead of this one have a Bond in better shape, and Sean Connery's weight bothered me more than either of you in this. And I'm not suggesting he was massively obese at all, but this is the same guy that we had just watched 4 weeks of where he just moved like a panther. I mean, he just had such a wonderful build and movement and everything. And he turns up for this film out of shape, and it's all got a bit sillier. Bond is suddenly starting to go down this road that you get with Roger Moore of knowing everything about everything. They, for the first time in my rankings, although certainly not the last time in the series, they cram in a Bond girl just so he's got someone to shag at the end of the film. And I just think it's all starting to look frayed around the edges. If you take the series in order, it's the first time they realise they've got a working formula, which was finalised with Thunderball. They hand it to Roald Dahl, and he kind of messes it up a little bit. And Connery is just starting to look frayed around the edges. And so this film, for the first time in the series, looks a little bit tired. So it's not bad, but I can't put it any higher. You Only Live Twice at number 17.
Chris, what about you?
Well, controversial. So, both of you guys have named a Brosnan film, and it's the same one. I'm going to go for a different one. It's going to be a very controversial one. Now,
We haven't named the same one. Becca's named two of them.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yes, that's right. I've gone for, again, I wasn't expecting to put it as it kind of surprised me when I thought about it, but as my... Oh, no, I've not. Die Another Day, of course. Jesus Christ. No, take that back. No, it's my second Brosnan.
Get on with it.
It's GoldenEye.
That will piss people off because it's such a fan favourite.
It is, and
shocked to the core.
You know why it's fan favourite? Because it's very safe and generic.
Thank you. That is exactly my view of that film. It is the most safety first, easy fucking bollocks you can imagine.
I mean, look, it's very nice. So, it has some few nice set pieces. I like the cast. I just think it for what it is, it's not that satisfying.
If it didn't follow a 6-year gap, if this was just, I don't know, if this had been, let's say, Dalton in 91, we wouldn't feel the same way about it at all.
We wouldn't, no.
I just think it is just so nothing as a film. But we'll talk about it more with my rankings when we get there, because I've got it a lot higher. But I kind of feel like I'm trying to balance quality and preference, and I've ranked it kind of on what I perceive to be quality and, more importantly, importance. On preference, it would be closer to where you are, because I just think it is the most wildly overrated film.
I've ranked it a lot higher myself as well, but I just think in terms of cultural importance, it's like, the first Bond film after, following the 6-year break, and but no, we'll get there when I come to it anyway. So.
Yeah, so GoldenEye, GoldenEye's my number 17. Yeah, as I say, it's just very by numbers, generic. It has a few nice touches. I like the casting majority of the time.
It's a nostalgia trip for
but it just feels like it feels very handsome. I like the style direction, but I just wish they had more to it.
I kind of think if all the Bond films looked the same, let's say they all starred Sean Connery and all had, 1964, 1965 style to it, and you made the necessary little adjustments to the script to make it work. I know it's not possible in reality because GoldenEye is inherently a very 90s Bond film, but if you could do that and you played all the films and you stripped away a lot of the stylistic elements and just got left with the plot, GoldenEye is nothing special.
Ultimately, when it came down to it, when I thought about Pierce Brosnan Bond film that I'd rather watch, there's two I'd definitely consider watching before I consider watching GoldenEye, and that's why it is there. It is lower than those two. So, yes. So, we're on to number 16. Shall I go first? Because...
why not?
I will just go simply on the count that, I prefer watching this film than going GoldenEye. It is Tomorrow Never Dies. I know it's featured lower than you guys, but, I understand what you're saying, and to...
no, I mean, hang on a minute. I've got it at 19, you got it at 16, Becca's got it at 21. They're in the same universe. None of
Yeah.
us are raving about this film, are we?
No, maybe my mind thought it was a bit lower. But anyway,
It's
but
good fun to watch, but it's not like classic by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think.
basically, I just think, in terms of it is generic by numbers, but it's fast moving, entertaining, lots of action. It's more satisfying as a Bond adventure, even if it is very paint by numbers, a soulless kind of job.
The car chase is amazing. The remote control car, that's fantastic.
And actually, that's probably my least favourite action scene in it. But I think Brosnan is better at it. I enjoy the hamminess of the villain. I know he's like Revider's like not being very good, but I just enjoy him being.
He loves it. He hands it all up.
Yeah, I just get. I'm also the scene with Dr. Kaufman. Is always worth it. So
Georgia from Stuttgart on
it is not an unenjoyable film.
Yeah. So that is my number 6. That is my number 16. Tomorrow Never Dies.
Dave, what do you reckon?
Well, actually, I ended up putting the Lewis Gilbert films all in a row, and it wasn't deliberate. And again, I'm aware I've got a few in quote unquote the wrong place in terms of where public opinion is, but I cannot justify putting it ahead of much that is ahead of it. At most, I could put it 2 places higher, but even that would be a stretch. I think arguably the most overrated film in the series, The Spy Who Loved Me, is at number 16. It's 2 places away from Moonraker. I put it ahead of Moonraker and You Only Live Twice because it has probably the best pre-title in the series. It has one of the best theme songs in the series, and I like the title sequence that goes with it. When it's good, it's better than You Only Live Twice. It's better than Moonraker. Neither of those have that sort of first 45 minutes this film has. It has an iconic henchman at his peak, which he isn't quite in Moonraker for different reasons. But it falls apart, and it's the most tonally confused film in the series in that it's goofy as fuck in places, and then the last 45 minutes is completely humorless. So I can see why it's iconic. It's got that big jump at the end. It's got James, I Need You, So Does England. It's got Tell Him to Pull Out Immediately. There are things in this film I love. They've put a Bond girl next to him who's a shit actress, but a great idea as a character. But the people who put The Spy Who Loved Me like in the top 5, I don't know what you're watching, or I think you've watched the first 10 minutes then switched it off, because after 10 minutes, it's one of the best films in the series. I mean, it has such a wonderful pre-title, but it's got an overrate Roger Moore who's better 2 years later. He's better in Moonraker. He is. Take away what you think of the films and just look at him. He's in better shape in Moonraker, and he's dialed it back a little bit. This film has, yes, it has the underwater Lotus. It's got things about it I like, but it is so much less than the sum of its parts. And as such, I can't put it any higher. Number 16, The Spy Who Loved Me.
Do you reckon that'll piss more people off than me putting GoldenEye in?
I think it's a wash, to be honest with you.
I think there's a few people here who are going to be like, what?
No, I think our generation are more into GoldenEye, so I think it will piss them off. But any classic Bond film fans like listening, older people listening to this will be, "Are you fucking having a laugh?"
Yeah, we like to piss off everybody.
Yeah, I can only give my opinion. The Spy Who Loved Me is not bad, but it frustrates me because there's one more film that I'm going to get to that frustrates me more, but it pisses away a perfect. It shows us that the sort of more frivolous Bond film, the more frivolous tone, can be done, and then it fucks it up. Jaws drops the breeze block on his foot, and the film dies. I don't like the film after that, and then it goes into this shitty sequence on the at the end of it, that is just poor, and it just goes on forever. So, iconically, it can't go too much lower because it's got so many things you point to that is quintessentially Bond, but it's boring and tonally confused.
I did wonder, because I did watch it recently, and it suddenly hit me that Barbara Bach, the way her, a really dreary line delivery, I suddenly realised that her dialogue must have been recorded, separately on a sound stage. Like they must have like shot all the lines. I wonder what her dialogue would have been better had it been done within the scene. I mean, I don't know much of Barbara Bach's work, but
I don't know because you watch most action films these days, and certainly any Star Wars films. I mean, literally, you watch the actors move their lips, and the sound is not them at the time. It's all ADR. So I don't know, but I don't hate this film. And as I say, if you rank the first 10 minutes, this and Skyfall suddenly shoot up the charts, but it pisses away so much goodwill, and they don't know when to stop. The silly clown music, and Roger Moore overacts terribly in this film. But there are positives to it. But yeah, I can't put it any higher. What about you, Becca? 16.
At number 16, Sweet 16, I have Moonraker.
Okay.
That's my number 16 spot.
All got it pretty close. 19, 18, and 16.
They're fairly similar. I think there's going to be sort of like apart from a few clangers here and there.
Yeah.
They're going to be kind of like vaguely similar, I think, aren't they? Yeah. Fair enough. Which is to be expected. We're all of the same sort. There's a few years between us, but we're the same generation, and being as big fans as we are.
I think we all don't think it's as bad as its reputation, though.
No, with Moonraker especially. I mean, it just looks amazing. Obviously, when they get into space, it's silliness on a galactic scale. Lasers in space? What? What's all that about? But I just, it has a good time. Holy Good Head, not too sure. The Jaws is probably less threatening, and it does have a rather kind of silly, silly action sequence in the pre-title scene there. But no, I enjoy it. It's fun to watch. But it is very much a product of its time, as I said before. In terms of like Star Wars and those kind of space-themed movies coming out at the time as well. It's just an attempt to for Bond to capitalise on what was the thing du jour basically. But yeah, it's my number 16 spot.
So on to number 15. Guys, what's your favourite? What's number 15 on the list?
Go on, Dave.
Okay, Quantum of Solace is at number 15. I kind of, if it had some more iconic elements to it, it might even have gone higher. There's a great film in this, but let's not exaggerate. It had a writer's strike. It had horrible editing. It had one of David Arnold's weaker scores. It had a director who I don't think was well suited to the series. It had a Bond girl sort of crammed in because there needs to be a woman there somewhere, but who cares?
Box ticking exercise.
It has...
At least he didn't fuck her at the end, that singer.
Yeah, I don't care either way. I mean, I don't necessarily want women lined up for him to fuck, but at the same time, if he's not going to, why are they there? But it's got Daniel Craig at its peak. I think increasingly over the years, it feels more of a piece, particularly as the subsequent films moved away. It feels more of a piece with Casino Royale than it did at the time. I think as you watch it again and again and stop worrying about the editing because you know what happens in a scene, so you're not watching every single cut in the same way. When you focus on the story, it's got big problems, but it's okay. This is in a section of Bond films in my rankings that are deeply flawed, but I've never had a bad time with it. I don't think it's got some of the campy problems that the Lewis Gilbert films below them have. It doesn't have the iconic elements they have, but it's got a far, far better Bond than Roger Moore. It's got a far, far better Bond than late-era Sean Connery. It's a beautiful-looking film, and it tries to do something different, and you will always win points with me for experimentation, even if that experimentation goes wrong. So it's a film that has to be this low because it was a failed experiment, but fair play for trying. One of the best James Bonds in a decent effort, Quantum of Solace at 15.
Becca?
15, I'm following on behind. My spot is Only Live Twice. I think, obviously, where I put Diamond Solo is purely because Connery was phoning it in. I think here is kind of, his heart's a little bit in it more, but he is starting to kind of phone it in. He's kind of on that on a slippery slope there. I love this film purely because Bond goes to Japan. And over the last couple of years, I sort of quite interested into its culture and its history and its language and things like that. And it's just one of my top places that I want to visit, thanks to Bond. Very exciting. Girls are a bit useless. Plot is a bit crazy, but it's got the most decent Blofeld in it, apart from Telly Savalas. One of the most. The Telly Savalas and Donna Pleasance. Whereas the other two, very useless. Yeah, I mean, the plot is it's typical. It's been, if you're going to parody Bond, you've got to do this plot, launching a missile from inside a hollowed out volcano lair, which is like the most classic Bond plots of all time. But just purely because of Connery and his performance is kind of waning a little bit. It's at my number 15 spot.
Okay. I'm going to piss off fans even more now.
You go for it. You own it.
Okay, my number 15 is a Bond film that is... I can't lie, it is a very well-made film.
I've already pasted what I think you're going to say into the cell. Because I'm putting them in on Excel as we go, just so we can refer back if necessary.
Yeah,
I've already guessed his 15. I'm going to see what he says, Chris.
Okay. Yeah, you probably guessed it. I think probably, but look, it's a very very good film. I think it's been kind of revered as one of the series' bests. I've always strongly disagreed, but yeah, sorry. Skyfall.
Yeah.
Look, it's enjoyable. I think it looks great. It has a really nice score. Has a good villain. The plot is nonsensical, however, but overall, it's kind of like, okay, it's like what we were saying with Never Say Never Again. It doesn't feel like for me, it doesn't feel like a Bond film, and it kind of it would be high. It would be so much higher if it had kind of a few more of the the warm comforts like the gun barrel and whatnot. But also, if it didn't have that whole, I don't know, let's just be in love with ourselves a little bit too much and just like be a really good, strong story, it would be so up there. But sadly, it's not. It's my number 15. It's bang in the middle. So, yeah, there you are. Skyfall is my number 15.
What's your 14, Chris?
Number 14 is a Bond film I expected to be much lower going into when we started doing this podcast, but it kind of surprised me, and after a few watches, I kind of got a bit more out of it. I think it looks great. I like the leading man. I always thought it was boring, but it actually engaged me a lot more. It's got a really good henchwoman in it. It's Thunderball. So yeah, not much more I can say about it other than the fact I just think it's a very classic Bond. I enjoyed it a lot more doing the reviews, and I respect it a heck of a lot more than I used to. So yeah, therefore, Thunderball is my number 14. Becca, what's your number 14?
No, I put Spectre at number 14, surprisingly enough. I think I enjoy it for a lot of the reasons people hate it. I mean, yes, it's Bond by numbers, and yes, Christopher Waltz does
nothing wrong with
his
Bond
way
by
through
numbers.
it. No, nothing wrong. There's perfectly good films of covered Bond by numbers, but that is what it is. Quantum's a bit kind of like Bond by numbers in many respects, but it's just box ticking exercise.
So isn't.
Well, this is it. It's like as if they go to make that sort of film, and they forget about
Quantum of Solace is not Bond by numbers. It's totally different from any other Bond film.
Well, no, exactly. It's they set out kind of to make a certain type of Bond film, and then they just don't. They just disregard it entirely, which is kind of what makes it exciting in many respects, but not enough for me, sadly. But yeah, no, I sort of struggle with sort of aspects of it that people seem to find it, aren't easy to kind of hate upon. But I'm just glad that they brought Winkle back into the fold. It's a shame that it kind of that McClory's death kind of was able to made this possible, which is very sad, but it's true. And it just for me it's really great. It's such a wasted opportunity, but I'm just glad it's back in the formula again, and hopefully they can next film they can follow it on.
What worries me, I think it might be even more wasted opportunity, because if Daniel Craig doesn't stay on, this whole storyline will just be a bit of a pointless reprise, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Definitely. Especially with Felt saying that if he's only going to come back if Daniel Craig comes back as well. And it's like, well, you don't know. It may say on the contract to do Spectre, and then a couple more whatever is contracted to do. But at this point we're kind of in a bit of limbo at the moment, because none of us kind of know, well, unless you're Eon, nobody knows what's going on really. Well, should Daniel Craig, nobody knows what's going on at this stage. It could be just that Daniel Craig's just on a bit of a hiatus, and obviously he's been given, been granted a bit of time to go and do some other projects to take a breather from Bond. But I really hope he does come back so he can kind of finish off what they started really. But who knows at this stage?
Yeah, it just makes me wonder, like, they should have, like, sort of just kept Blofeld until the next Bond comes in, and then do something more significant and more satisfying with that, rather than kind of shoehorn it into the franchise at a too late a stage with, a Bond that's, like, creeping into his 50s now. I just think it's a bit heavy-handed, and it's a bit like, gun-ho, and a bit more like, quick, we need to do it. Like Dave said, I don't blame him for wanting to do it, but at the same time, it's, they should have just waited. But anyway, yes. Dave, we've got your number 14, sorry.
Yeah, my number 14, I think, is the one film in the series that, in retrospect, almost breaks my heart. If I was putting this on preference, it would be a little bit higher. This is one of those films that I can't justify putting any higher than it is. But it tries hard. It has a theme I like. And I so wanted to love it because of what my favourite Bond film is. It was the one shot this Bond actor had at greatness, and he kind of fluffed it. And it breaks my heart in retrospect. It should be so much higher. The closest, it's not his highest ranked film in my list, but it's the only shot he had at greatness. Number 14, The World Is Not Enough.
I totally see what you're going for, and I'm just going to shoot the gun here. It is my number 13 as well. So it's the next one along.
And I thought we'd have them close together. I would have bet that I'd put it highest of the three of us, but I think what we've effectively done is put it in the same sort of area.
Yeah, I mean, it's my favourite Brosnan. I think...
It's my favourite Brosnan. I just can't argue it's the best. And I've had to balance those two things.
It's not my favourite. I'll say that now.
But you're wrong.
Sorry.
Well, look, it's his best actual performance as Bond.
Sure, yeah, it's more human performance. I think more human side of Bond.
It is the film that taught me that there's no point living if you can't feel alive.
What the last screw?
Face.
But you know what? I kind of always enjoy it. It's it's a decent enough ride. It's got a good twist, as Becca said before when she mentioned it in her ranking. I kind of see the potential, and I do believe the kind of the romance there more than say what happens in Spectre. It must be down to either the director or, I don't know, maybe the chemistry between the two actors. But it just says something like, a director like Sam Mendes couldn't get a connection between the Bond and the girl and sell us a romance. But like Brosnan in his most, I don't know, in his heyday, at a time where like Bond was just knocking Bond films out, like as if it's just like cheap thrills, managed to sell us more of a love story. I generally kind of keep going back to this and having a good time with it, so that's why it's as high as it is.
Well, I will go next, simply because we've just because of the conversation we've just had. At number 13 for me is Spectre. Now, when it was released, I thought it was fantastic, with problems, but I thought it would go ahead of Skyfall. Now, I haven't named Skyfall yet, so clearly it doesn't. On an enjoyment basis, I think of all the films in this series, it's so shiny. Everyone looks so great in every sequence, and it's beautiful to look at, but it just doesn't really stand up to rewatch. And the tying everything to Bond was a mistake. And I tend to think now, and it's only really just occurred to me recently, the biggest mistake they make is not using Blofeld. It's using Blofeld as the main antagonist. The main antagonist is Spectre, not Blofeld. And we saw that in the Connery era, that Dr. No is Spectre, Red Grant and Rosa Klebb are Spectre, as is Largo, and so on.
It makes Spectre a bigger thing. It's like, what the
Blofeld
fuck is it?
is the figurehead at the end of it, and he's a good reveal, but fair enough. You've blown your wad in one film. Now, you didn't need to do that. We could have carried on for 2 decades without seeing Blofeld. That could easily have happened. Have Spectre recurring, have them as a shadow over things. But instead, not only have we had Blofeld, and not one of the weaker performances I've ever seen from that actor, but everything's tied to Bond. And I just think the leaps they tried to make to tie it to Casino Royale, the circumstances of which getting to Casino Royale were happenstance, because if Bond hadn't stopped the plot at Miami, there would have been no need for it. You cannot tie that together. It's too much of a reach. And also, they blew what should have been a very special love story. That said, it's very pretty. The action's better, I think, than in Skyfall. I think the score's a little bit better than Skyfall's as well. It's got the gun barrel in the right place. It's got lots about it I like. But yeah, it's dropped away, but it's the last film in the series, in my rankings, that I would describe as seriously flawed. Everything from now on goes to, like, very good. It sits in the middle. So Spectre at number 13 for me. So what about you, Becca? You're number 13.
My number 13 is The Living Daylights. Tim's first entry into the Bond series is at number 13, but that doesn't mean it's entirely unlucky.
That has genuinely stunned me. I thought The Living Daylights was a favourite of yours.
Yeah, it turns out there are films that I like a bit more.
And the thing is that when you came into it, you thought Living Daylights was better than License, or you preferred Daylights over License.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've changed a few aspects of it, but no, I mean, I still really enjoy it. I still really enjoy it, and it's in terms of. Okay, I think it's because his 2 films is the one I came to first, so I'd obviously watched it more.
Yeah.
But I think this is going to sound really bad. I don't know how else I can say it, but like you guys kind of rubbed off on me a little bit, and that sounds really dirty. I don't mean it to sound that way. Not like that.
Don't read anything into that, listener. She just meant we came over her.
Oh dear, Roger Moore's like going, oh, groaning. Oh dear. No, as I say, it's I still have a lot of love for this movie. It's ridiculous. It's very silly. There's some brilliant performances, great score. I love the score. Kind of very more like again very sort of electronically driven. Great action action scenes. Kara's a bit of a dipstick, but you know she's lovable. And Tim's very important, very vital in the role as well. It's number 13, but as I said, it's not unlucky by any stretch of the imagination.
All right, we're into the top half now, Chris.
Yeah, number 12.
What's yours?
My number 12 is Quantum. It's Quantum of Solace.
Okay.
I know I've ranked 2 of the other Craigs that probably perceived as better. I still get a lot of enjoyment out of it, and like I said in the review, it holds up for me. I acknowledge there are problems, and I just accept them. It's not perfect by any stretch of the means. And like you, Dave, it does experiment. It does try to do something different, but also pick up the pace from Casino Royale. And it's probably by association with Casino Royale alone that I like it the way I do. You know, when watching this back to back, it works so much better. It's more akin of how I wished Daniel Craig films went, even though this wasn't a successful film in the franchise. Well, particularly in popular opinion, anyway. But even with all its flaws, this is kind of how I wished Daniel Craig went, as opposed to the likes of, say, Skyfall or Spectre. So at number 12,
this feels more him.
Quantum of Solace, yes. This feels more like how it should have gone, really. I feel like Spectre, it sounds bad to say, but Quantum and Spectre is kind of like a step backwards. It feels like you're just kind of like playing it safe again. You're just sort of giving the audience what they want rather than what they need, or what like a good story deserves. There's not much of a decent story being told, which whatever you say, at least this was like a continuation of a story, and this could have been Quantum could have been like the New Age Spectre, and it would have worked better, and it would have made a lot more sense in terms of its conception.
But over time, it would have made it less important to cram Spectre back in.
Yeah. Because
you've got the modern equivalent. No one has questioned whether we even want Spectre. They've just assumed, and the nostalgia in most Bond fans, because we're quite a conservative bunch in our way, has kind of gone, yeah. But you just think, well, had you carried on with Quantum and it had been an Al Pacino or a Rachel Weisz or whatever, you just think, well, like, would that have been so bad? Would that have been any worse than what we had? I do think it's flawed in execution, and a lot of the reason I'm not such a big fan of it is that it is a miserable big screen experience for most people who ever experience it that way, but it's aging quite nicely.
Yeah. I agree. I think the reason for it is, I think, because of time, if they shot straight afterwards, I don't think we'd have had that issue. But I think after like being 4 years away, and after kind of Quantum being considered a failure, they just kind of want to step away from Quantum as much as possible. So I think Quantum died by association with Quantum of Solace, which is a shame. But there you go.
There was just no need. But anyway.
But yes, so that's my number 12. Becca, what's your number 12?
Number 12 is For Your Eyes Only. We're kind of getting into the top 10. Sadly, this just missed the mark by one. But it's one of the harder edge Bond movies.
Sorry, Becca. Did you want to include it in your top 10? Or was this one of the films that you?
Is it one of those you're like, oh god, I had to put it that low?
No, it's a great film. And after Moonraker, obviously we're just getting on a little bit now.
Give us a kiss.
Give us a kiss. Oh, really, Mr. Bond? Whatever it is he said.
It was like I was speaking to Margaret Thatcher or something. Jesus.
Bloody hell. Spinning in the grave, Jesus. The less said about her is the better. She's like the low point of this movie, even though she was a premiere at the time. But it's one of Roger's best films, I think. But I've just got one of his films that's placed... Hold on.
You got a couple, I think, haven't you?
Yeah, placed a little bit higher.
You got a couple. There's a couple you haven't named yet.
Yeah, definitely. There's a few there. But there's one which is very high, and I should just go to you all. But no, it's I think it's one of, in terms of performance, it's one of his strongest roles for sure. But yeah, I kind of just wanted to put in, but it's not just misses, just shy of the top by top 10 there. Just because there are other films by other Bonds who I think are stronger and who I personally enjoy more. I used to think this film was very dull once it got into the rock climbing sort of scenes as they kind of ascend up to the monastery. I used to think, oh my god, will this never end? And it kind of, in my rankings, it always kind of fell towards the bottom somewhere. But it's just like a fine wine, it's kind of, it's growing with age, and it's I can appreciate it more. As I would as well, I can appreciate it more, the kind of more solid aspects of it. After seeing this in previous films as well, it's like, Casino Royale after Die Another Day. It's just permanently,
it's a good score, Becca. I mean, 12th is a perfectly respectable position for it. You know what I mean? Obviously, Chris and I have put it higher because, spoiler alert, it's not going to be my number 12. It's going to be a bit higher than that.
Oh yeah, no,
Chris hasn't named it yet, but the fact is, 12 is a perfectly respectable place to put it, I'd say. But
it's my number 12.
My number 12, I wish I could put it higher, and in my previous rankings, it was higher. But again, it's balancing quality and enjoyment. It is slower than most of the Bond films around it. It's beautiful. It's got one of the weaker scores from that era, in my opinion. Connery's brilliant in it, but his wig's shit. It's got the worst... This will give it away if you haven't figured it out already. It's got the worst speeding up in the entire series. And a lot of the wow factor of this film was specific to its time because you hadn't had the underwater photography at this point that you would take for granted now. So I can imagine if I'd gone to see this film in 1965, I would have walked out blown away by it. A lot of people find Domino one of the most beautiful Bond girls in the series. I actually just think she's pretty bland. I wish I could put it higher, but most of the films above it I enjoy more. But we are now into the very good. At number 12 for me, Thunderball.
And he strikes.
Strikes.
Oh yeah. I enjoy Thunderball. I think I liked it a lot more than Division did. So yeah. So what are we on to number 11?
My number 11. This is normally I've only ever ranked the Bond films once. I've got a big reveal about that later, but anyway. The one time I ranked it, this was the highest ranking Roger Moore film. It still wasn't in the top 10, and it isn't now, but another film has overtaken it. I think this is a very fine debut. It's hurt a little bit by the thing of the day, its blaxploitation theme, but it's one. If Roger Moore had never done another Bond film, you'd look at him and say, well, that was a missed opportunity because he looks the part, he's good in the role, he's less physical than Sean Connery, but he plays it smooth and suave. I really like this film. So at number 11, Live and Let Die.
It is a bit of a classic as well, Live and Let Die. It's
really good. I wish I could have put it in the top 10, but there's only 10 slots. You know?
and then what I kind of like about it is that it's not afraid to kind of mix things up and kind of be a bit more relevant as well with its blaxploitation and voodoo kind of side of it. So it's not next on my list, but I do appreciate it. Becca, what's your number 11?
Well, it's funny enough you should say Live and Let Die is your number 11, Dave. So is mine.
Oh.
Okay.
Finally something we agree on. Hey. Because we disagree a lot. It's just one of those things. It's Roger's first.
Respectfully.
Oh no, definitely. That's what it's all about.
I only talk shit about you sneakily and behind your back.
Oh, good. It was. If we all agreed, it'd be boring, wouldn't it? And nobody would want to listen.
No, absolutely. So. No, it's fine.
But no, it's all good. It's Roger's first one. But again, it's same with Moonraker. It's the product of its time. So you've got sort of blaxploitation movies, and it's the Bond genre trying to kind of fit into that. As I would kind of agree with what was it? I can't. I'm rubbish with people remember people's names. The Matthew Sweet kind of review. Basically, I think it's not a Bond movie. It's just a blaxploitation movie that happens to feature a character called James Bond. But I think he kind of, I think he was older than Connery. I think when he took on the role.
Yeah, I mean, he still is.
Yeah, well, no, yes, he still is. But no, I mean, in terms of kind of, when he first kind of entered that kind of, obviously he's going to be older than Connery, isn't he? But you know what I mean.
I said it at the time, Becca, that we came out of Diamonds Are Forever, and I just thought Sean Connery played it like an old man. 2 years later, we have a Bond that is, at that point, 5 years older than Connery was in Diamonds Are Forever, and he just looks so fresh.
He looks so much better, doesn't he? I think he's a lot fitter. Even though he's kind of like into his early 40s. I mean, that's not old, by any means.
He was 45 during most of filming of this. And
yeah, and he still does the scenes,
he stayed in the role too long, but the fact is, no problem with him here at all.
No, definitely not. I mean, he's really good in the role. He's kind of like a real force, I think, to be reckoned with here. He's dangerous, but he's also, very charming, very suave, very stylish. And just, I think it's just misses out in my top 10. But it's a very earnest first stab at the role, I think, and one that goes down in history. I think there's one of those classic 70s movies.
My number 11 is a film that both of you guys have already mentioned so far. It has its flaws, but it has a very lush score. I think it's very pretty to look at. It has a lot of the Bond tropes, and I think it, generally to me, it's classic Bond. It's You Only Live Twice. As I said, it's not perfect when you look at it from a critical eye, but from a sentimental kind of as a Bond fan growing up watching this as a kid, it has a lot of sentiment to it, and I think it gives birth to a lot of the tropes. I mean, like I think when you guys mentioned that it essentially is almost like it's if you see a spoof of a Bond film, it's mainly spoofing You Only Live Twice, and I think that sort of says kind of what it means. Like this is like this stereotypical Bond film. So yeah, number 11. You Only Live Twice.
I mean, I bought a few Bond films on VHS in about 97 or 98. I didn't buy that many, but I bought a few of what I perceived were my favourites. And this was one of the Connery ones I bought, and I bought it thinking it was my favourite. And then I watched it, and it wasn't. And I think that speaks to what you're saying, that you see it as a kid, and it just hits you right in the nostalgia.
Yeah, it's not a favourite, but then again, I think about it, and I remember a lot, like, yes, it has problems, but I think a lot of things I actually liked about it, and, I remember thinking, Connery's, yeah, he's putting on a weight, but I think a lot of the time he's actually trying, but then you have the whole, let's turn him Japanese.
Which lasts about 5 minutes.
Yeah. Which, so yeah, the things that could have been better, but then again, as much as like I know you weren't a fan of, you think Donald Pleasant wasn't as a good Blofeld.
No, I flat out don't like him.
But I remember that first time when, like, seeing it, and it was kind of iconic. The look is still iconic to this day. And I think that's the one thing about You Only Live Twice, is that it is iconic. So, yeah, it is my number 11.
Like Fuji-san, it is iconic, definitely.
Yeah.
Cool. We're into the top 10, folks.
We're going to have to include that in.
You mean... All right, shall I kick off the top 10?
Go on then.
Go for it.
Okay. If I were marking this purely on preference, this would not be in the top 10. I think this is flat out the most I would say the most overrated series in the series, but I put The Spy Who Loved Me at 16, so maybe that would be.
Oh.
But a lot of our generation fucking jerk themselves silly over this film. It's got a shit score. It's got the worst performance from that particular Bond that he ever does. It's got the most overrated villain in the series, in my opinion. But it has a terrific hench woman. It has it refreshes the series. It has a fantastic M and one of the best M sequences in the entire series. And it is frankly the most important film in the series. Past Dr. No, past Goldfinger actually. I think the first three sort of really put it on the map. But after License to Kill, which is a film I love, but the public didn't, and after Dalton, who's a Bond I love, but the public didn't, 6 years away, the end of the Cold War, there is no more important Bond film than this. So it just sneaks into the top 10. It gives Brosnan a place in the top 10. It's nowhere near as good as its reputation, but it's important and it's enjoyable. At number 10, GoldenEye.
Yeah, I think like we said, it is what the franchise needed at that time.
Yes.
So, God love it for being that way.
And I do like it. I do like it a lot. I'm negative about it only because it is that sort of trying to damn it with faint praise, because too many people jerk off about it. If you like it, that's great, but objectively, it's not a great film. It's a decent enough film.
I think there's many of Bond films. I think there's a few Bond films in the series that came along at the time that just gave it
The Spy Who Loved Me is very similar. It needed it. Been a gap by the standards of the series at that time, 3 years. And it produced something that made people feel good about the series again. So I don't love The Spy Who Loved Me. I don't particularly love GoldenEye, but they're both important. GoldenEye is the better of the two of them for me. But yeah, it just sneaks into the top 10. This and I think the next couple are in the sort of really good but flawed still, and then we get to the greats. Becca?
At the number 10 spot, I have Skyfall.
Okay.
Obviously, it was the 50th anniversary movie. Very important. Yes, the last third of the movie is Home Alone. But apart from that, I just... Well, it turns into a home invasion thriller, doesn't it, pretty much?
Yeah, it's when Daniel Craig splashes on some aftershave and screams in the mirror.
It was the paint cans like swinging around hitting Javier Bardem in the face.
I know, and Javier Bardem...
And all the little model cars that they go all over. Obviously, yes, all the booby traps that he sets around his house. But, no, I just think, it's a 50th anniversary movie, so it is carrying a lot on its shoulders. I think it did, apart from that dodgy last half, it just did everything right. Even though kind of the colour palette kind of looks a little bit on the dull side, there's lots of like blues and greys, and very obvious product placement, which is a bit of a pain, but hey, that's how you fund the movie these days. Don't know, but I really enjoyed it from start to finish. It's one of Craig's better Bond movies. Just because it's the anniversary movie, then it ends number 10 spot in my top 10.
Okay, well, everyone knows how I feel on that, so...
Yeah, moving on. What's your number 10?
My number 10, again, kind of like You Only Live Twice, it's a stone cold classic. It doesn't have many of the Bond tropes as the other aforementioned classic Bond films, but that's for a very good reason. It's the one that started it all. It's Dr. No. Now, yeah, I think for me, Dr. No as top 10 just seems absolutely right to me. It's not amongst my favourites, but it's just got classic written over it. It's very classy, very kind of... I mean, who'd have thought that this film would kick off the franchise that it is now? It's kind of like, you don't really... But it is very... Again, it just has its moments. I think it looks great. Like, Connery is just, a new star on the horizon, and God bless it. Dr. No, number 10.
Okay, well, I'll go first on the next, simply because it does follow on. I am really stunned I've put this highest of the three of us. I was pretty sure Chris would put it lowest. That doesn't surprise me, but I thought Becca would put it higher than me. This is the highest ranking Bond film I don't, to some degree, love. And when I've mentioned Thunderball, which I love Live and Let Die to some degree. There's parts of the world it's not enough I love. There are films below this I like more, but I can't justify putting it any lower. It's ambitious. It tries to do something different. It has a fantastic pre-title. It has one of my favourite title sequences in the entire series, and it tries to do something different. But I've got real problems with it. It goes in the top 10. I almost don't want to put it there because on preference it would be lower. But trying to balance quality and preference, at number 9, Skyfall.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah, fair enough, I think.
I can understand that.
You put it very similar.
Yeah, I can sympathise having it at number 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's that same sort of thing where you put quality in terms of like in preference of rankings of Bond, so that's why it's kind of where it is. But I completely understand the position. It's a very watchable film to watch.
The last time I ranked Bond films, I don't remember all of my rankings, but Skyfall hadn't long come out. It'd been out a month or two. I put it 4th equal. There was only 2 films in the series I put right next to each other. Skyfall was 4th equal. It's been dropping ever since, to be honest with you. I don't know that it will drop much more, except for other films displacing it. I think it's objectively quite good, but everyone jerks off about the way it looks. It doesn't look that great, as far as I'm concerned. It's full of narrative holes, and it's all set up. But at the same time, pre-title, great title sequence, great performances. And it tries to do something different. It doesn't have some of the holes that GoldenEye has in it. doesn't have the terrible score that GoldenEye has, and it's not as paint by numbers as Spectre. So, whilst I started off enjoying Spectre more than this, I think this is going to age much, much better. And I do think this is, as much as I don't love it, it is one for the ages. It is. I think Skyfall will be one of the classics of the series in years to come.
Oh, boy. I'm kidding.
Becca.
And number 9, I have Thunderball.
And he strikes.
I'm following on from you guys. Sanchez.
Do you think, Sammy? Oh, yeah, sure.
I'm surprised. Like I'm the one who put this lowest as well, because I thought I may possibly would be put this quite high considering, but then maybe because my interpretation was quite low when I first going in. But anyway, yeah, Becca, well, Thunderball.
No, it's just, despite the bad wig, and the sped up film, no, it's quite good. I mean, you've got a lot of people kind of say like you've got Goldfinger's kind of where like the Bond formula sort of came into being. Arguably, it's kind of bleeds into Thunderball as well. The underwater scenes do look beautiful. It's just beautifully shot. Largo is a formidable villain. One of the most dangerous sort of Spectre agents I think we've seen in the entire series.
Got the evil eye on me.
Terrible. You don't want to be up against him for sure. I think he's a very underrated villain as well because he doesn't I don't know, so he doesn't do a lot, but he has an awful lot of agency behind him. And he's quite sort of heavyweight, and also in terms of the man's build as well, but he's also quite physically menacing and threatening as well.
I think it's predominantly down to how I think he looks better than how like his character actually is. I don't I mean, it's not saying he's got a bad character to him, but I think the film doesn't do
The eye patch.
Yeah.
No, it's quite menacing.
You're going to get something iconic, and he's just not.
He's just okay, a villain. I mean, like his henchwoman has a lot more lasting impression, really.
Yeah, she's much more interesting than he is, I think, and it's really interesting to have like a female villain, and I think that's kind of what made Sophie Marceau so special, just because you don't really see that very often, apart from obviously you've got your kind of Emma Bunt style characters.
Whilst you've got what am I trying to say? If you've got the thing with Largo is they are now. I don't think this film is tired in the same way that You Only Live Twice starts to look tired.
No,
but at the same time, if you're watching one a year, this is the 4th film, only 3 years after Doctor No, so one a year. I think by now Largo might have started looking tired, and I don't think he doesn't stand out like Goldfinger does. And in the next film you got Blofeld. What you think of that Blofeld is neither here nor there, really. But he is like number 1. So I do think Largo and this film in general suffers a little bit by association, in that it's the slowest paced of the first few. But yeah, Fiona Volp's fantastic. Chris, what have you got at number 9?
Number 9 is a film that it's another childhood favourite, and when we went to review it, we're kind of harsh on it, and maybe we've sort of looked at it a bit too critically. Got to rewatched it again, and I have a good time for it again. It's really iconic. Yes, it has problems, but so does it's Roger Moore at its peak. It's The Spy Who Loved Me. I've got as my number 9.
No, I respect that. I couldn't put it that high, but I get why people would, because it's the Roger Moore film. It is, and it's just still flat out enjoyable, even though it doesn't make sense. It's all totally all over the place. It kind of it basically does same thing as You Only Live Twice does. There's that same plot. Lends itself to a fantastic commentary, though, folks. Yeah, it does have all the things you want in it in a Bond film, and it delivers. So it's just we're talking now. This is purebred classics, even though there are maybe still some faults here or there within it. But at the end of the day, it's you still come back to it, and it's Roger at his most Roger. What have you put at 8? Okay, 8. Well, speaking of Roger, I'm gonna go for Roger again. I'm gonna Roger more. It's a film that I think when we're talking about films that refresh the series, I think after
judge of that was Diamonds Are Forever. I think this one kind of spices things up a little bit. It's Live and Let Die. I think this was a little bit more adventurous. As Dave said, Roger Moore just felt fresh. He proved that he was a different take on the character, and yes, I suppose there are some issues like there is with any Roger Moore film, but it holds itself. It never gets boring. It has a crazy death scene with the main villain, but God love it for it. But and probably one of the best demonstrations of how to make coffee. So so
Britain was struggling and just living on Bovril until Live and Let Die came out. If you've got a spare 8 minutes, you can get a thimble full of coffee.
Black, of course, because
Probably that was it.
So Live and Let Die is my number 8. Guys, what's your number 8?
I almost wanted to put this film higher, but at the same time, I think it's no secret I don't like Roger Moore as James Bond, so I'm kind of pleased he got one this high. If you stuck Timothy Dalton in this film and took out the silly fucking parrot and took out Margaret Thatcher and tightened the whole thing where they go to get the ATAC, I honestly think this would be top 5. As it is, I think this film is magnificent, and people do trip over the fact that they think it's a bit slow or it's not as showy or iconic. The fact is, this is an extremely fine James Bond film. Roger Moore's best performance in the role, even though he's slightly too old, at number 8 for Your Eyes Only.
I think Roger Moore should have bowed out by now.
Yes, he should. He shouldn't have been there, but he actually did really well with it.
But then again, this is his best performance, so if he didn't bow out, he wouldn't have delivered it. So,
well, Roger Moore, as he went on, looked smarmy.
Yeah,
and I didn't believe he could kill anyone, and he overplayed everything right back to when he was drugged on the boat in Spy Who Loved Me. Well, in this film, he's about to be sort of dragged over some rocks and cut to shreds with Melina, and he just says, "We're not dead yet." And he's so reassuring, and he's so caring, and he's got a 23-year-old there that he doesn't fucking lech over.
And he's straight as well. He's very much more kind of.
He's very much a straight man, isn't he? Definitely.
He's a bit more stern. It's not like he's not all raising eyebrows all over the place. He's kind of very much.
He goes to talk to like. There's no M in this film, but he goes and talks to the minister and Tanner, and they say to him, "We've lost our only lead." And he goes, well, okay, if this is the case, that might be the case, and there's still hope. And it's much more procedural than most of Roger Moore's films. It doesn't have, the Union Jack jump off the cliff. It doesn't have James, I Need You, So Does England. It doesn't have so many things, when I think about it, that Roger Moore's first few films have in terms of iconography. But it's his best performance, it's his best film. And I'm going to get to a film in a couple that is kind of its stablemate. And I'll talk a little bit more about it then, but for its foibles, it could have been higher. But at number 8, I'm very pleased to be able to put For Your Eyes Only. Becca.
Conversely, I have Dr. No at number 8.
Okay.
Sean's first movie. Or first mate terms, Sean Connery's first movie.
Yeah.
But just because I was, it was just really important in the role. Sets the whole tone really for the rest of the genre. It's not top 5, but it's I think it's totally worthy of being inside the top 10. Sadly, it's not the first one. But it's like, iconic villain, iconic scenes, iconic Bond girl as well. Just lovely locations.
I think if it's sort of speaking on behalf of Becca as well, she can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's, out of all the lists that's in the top 10, this is the one that either we don't even love, we don't love as much as the others, but we respect it a heck of a lot. Which is where it's there, and and even looking at it from a critical point of view, there isn't any fat on it. It's it's very nicely done. Sean's just like excellent, and the only thing missing is that it's just, I would say it's slow, but it's not. It just takes its time, and I kind of like that. So, sorry to just talk over you, Becca. I just
no, you didn't talk over me at all. No, that's perfectly fine. That could be sums up everything I want to say, really. I mean, it's like today's filmmaking standards, it may be slow just because we're used to kind of more fast-paced cutting and what have you. But it's kind of, alongside other kind of 60s spy thrillers of the same genre, it's a real breath of fresh air. And it's the first one, so it's very important in the series. And that's why it's at number 8 on my list.
Well, I'll follow straight on from that, actually, because I've got Dr. No at number 7. I'm actually gutted to put it this low, because if I were marking purely on preference, it would be top 4. It is actually my favourite Connery. I don't think it's the best, though. I can't justify putting it higher. From Russia with Love and Goldfinger are clearly above it because I've not named them yet. And they're better films. But Dr. No just has a feel to it I adore. And it would be in my top 3 or 4 films to just sling on. I love the look of it. I love the feel of it. I love Connery's performance in it. I don't really love the last half an hour. I don't actually like the Dr. No stuff. But everything to do with set up with him in the casino, him going to see Emmett about 3 a.m, his first meeting with Moneypenny, Sylvia Trench in his flat, meeting Jack Lord at the airport, or not at the airport, but being followed by him at the airport and meeting him later. Oh, and him going around his hotel room and, checking it all out and getting it ready. The whole Strangway stuff, even sort of mission control, if you like, at MO6, where they're trying to get hold of Jamaica, and you've got all those banks of phones with everyone smoking. I just adore this film. I can't put it higher than it is, but it is in my top 3 or 4 favourite James Bond films. At number 7 for me is Dr. No, and I think it's quite appropriate I put it top because I love it. Becca and Chris respect it. I love it.
I think I think it does have one of my favourite iconic Bond moments, which is like, that's a Smith and Wesson, you've had your 6, and
fantastic stuff.
Yeah,
I couldn't for a second argue it's the best. It's my favourite though.
Yeah, I've got your favourite. License to Kill at number 7. Amazingly enough, that surprised me that it's so high. It's kind of more. Even though I do love Living Daylights, I think it's not a better Bond film. It's a much better action film, I think, of the 2 of his films. Sanchez is a great villain, but again, it's kind of like not villain du jour, but it's kind of a lot of those. It's dealing with the politics and the cultural landscape at the time, what was going on. But I think it's one of the rare films where Bond tackles then modern day issues, but they're much more believable. I think it's certainly more. Despite his befront hairdo, he feels much more dangerous in this film. We do think, oh my god, he's actually going to pop up and put a bullet in you. He's very dangerous in this movie. I think there is chemistry between him and his leading ladies, with other people may not, be so believable of it. But no, so it's definitely worthy of number 7 ranking there. But no, it's just, it's a really good sort of, late 80s, late 90s action movie as well. I love the score. The score is fantastic. A lot of that Spanish guitar in it. So
it would have almost stretched credibility if it had shot up to like top 5 or something. The fact is, you had a great experience with it. You enjoyed talking about it with us, and it's a film you've been able to reappraise. So yeah, 7th is great.
Well, exactly. Yeah, it's the same with like Furious Only over the years, and that as well. It's gone from a bit. I thought, oh god, really dull, really boring, to actually, it's a hard-edged proper spy thriller, and it's not what you're more fanning around,
No, exactly. Emphasis on fanny. It's watching.
Snigger. Okay, well, with that, Furious Only is my number 7. It's my favourite Roger. I have.
What was your favourite Roger, Becca? You never answered that. I'm only kidding. Go on.
My favourite Roger is coming very soon.
Really? Great night ahead. Sorry,
I regret that seems like
sorry.
We've got so my top 10, I've got basically 3 Rogers back to back on yeah, so in a row, but in day Furious Only, I've always said this, it's no surprise, it's my favourite Roger Moore film in the series. It's his best performance. I think listeners will probably gather that I'm a more fan of the harder edge take on Bond than, say, the more lighter tone. As much as I still enjoy the lighter tone, but I think when I tend to sort of sit up and take notice more when Bond is being gritty and dark and violent. That is why I kind of prefer my James Bond stories. So it'd be no surprise this is my favourite Roger Moore. I think it's very mature. I think it's I think it looks great. I think the action scenes are handled very well. I think it's a nice ground to earth change coming from Moonraker to this, and I actually quite like the music, even though it's a lot of it's kind of very Bill Conti, but I think he does a really really good solid job with this. So that's my number 7 for Your Eyes Only, and that's despite there being a parrot and Margaret Thatcher turning up. Number 6, guys. Who wants to go first?
I have That's Why You Love Me at number 6. Just because I love it. It's rubbish. It's not rubbish. No,
it is. We'll take your first answer. It's just like Bullseye. We take your first answer. That's it.
Well, it's totally confused. The first half is a completely different film to the second half. But the villain is suitably loony. Barbara Bach, she looks good, but may not be the best actress. Jaws is amazing in this movie. I think Richard Kill makes a greater impression here than he does in Moonraker. And it's just ridiculously silly. And I love it. For all its warts and all. It's just brilliant from start to finish. I recently saw it on the big screen, well, a couple of months ago now. It feels so long ago. But just it holds up even, with the passing of time. It's great fun to watch it. It's cheesy, it's silly, it's ridiculous, but nobody does it better, quite frankly.
Apart from the 5 films you're about to name.
yeah, apart from the top 5, of course, but
nobody does it.
In terms of Roger as Bond,
best.
What I kind of admired from the recent viewings was how it actually takes risks in some of the score, like the stuff in Egypt, the music cues and that just seemed very kind of like, wow, you went there, and it feels kind of very. I think it sounds brilliant. I think it sort of elevates the film at certain points. So I think the score does actually help, even though at times it does sound a little bit cheesy enough. But
it's all over the place, but when it's good, it's great.
Yeah.
There are some really silly aspects, like for example, when you see there's obviously when is it Max Calby? He sort of chases during the laser sequence at the in Giza. And there's like really cheesy bits, and I think that you just think, oh, cringe. I mean, I'm sure like in when it came out they were like, oh, this is amazing, but
it kind of reminds me. Look, watching it now, it kind of reminds me of a Giallo film.
Yeah.
Because in fact it's got like sort of that moody kind of red or green lighting, flashing back. You see Jaws just standing there in the shadows, sort of glaring.
Yeah, it's very sort of expressionistic kind of style, isn't it? But obviously without the blood.
Yeah, and then
without the bloodletting of a Giallo movie.
And then is it who's it? Peckish.
That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah, Peckish just foolishly just like sort of just. I think my life might be in danger. I know. I think I might just run off into some sort of darkened corner.
Yeah, 2 lethal agents beside you, but run.
Yeah.
Yeah, and amongst a large crowd of people,
And also, Roger looks shit in this film compared to Moonraker. But hey, here we go. This is the first big fucking spread of difference between us. Becca, The Spy Who Loved Me, at position 6. Chris at number 9, me at 16.
That tells you something, folks.
Chris, what did you put at 6?
I was surprised by this. I thought I was going to have this in my top 5. But in light of a certain film, it was a toss-up. Originally, this was going to sort of stand head and shoulders with another classic, and I had to kind of decide, and I hum and hard. But my number 6 is From Russia with Love. I've said it's my favourite Connery, and
evidently not.
Well, I think it kind of comes tied to an almost extent, even though Goldfinger is higher. but I think I'll talk about Goldfinger, but I think the only thing that sets it apart is really this feels less of a Bond film, more of an actual thriller. But I just love this Bond take. Again, it's like back when the franchise was finding its feet. And had the. I think what happens later on is a very bold, confident, and iconic. I think that's probably the key word I'd use for that. What happens later is iconic, but this is very rich, very classic, no holds barred. I still hold it very highly, but
we're in rarefied air now. You might ask about putting it 6th, 2nd, 3rd, 1st, or whatever.
It almost pains me.
Yeah. Certainly with Chris, I know Chris from for your eyes only upwards. We're talking.
Well, yeah, we're talking literally. These are my favourites, and there's very far between them. So yeah. So yeah, that's my number 6.
Mine is The Living Daylights. This is the highest it's ever been in my esteem. I adored it this time, and the only reason it isn't one place higher is I think the film that comes ahead of it is a bit more consistent. That said, I do think the raw materials of For Your Eyes Only are better. I do think it's just an ancient Roger Moore, albeit given his best performance, and some of the silly elements of it and a couple of bits that drag knock it below this, but I do think it's a better looking film and all the rest of it. I'll talk more about Dalton when we get to the other film, but it falls outside the top 5, but not by a lot, and largely because of all the Afghanistan stuff, which bores me. But yeah, The Living Daylights a very, very fine James Bond film, and I've got it at number 6.
Okay, well, my number 5 is, well, it's no surprise. It was originally going to be my number 6. I always had this film pegged at that. But watch it now, I realise that, god damn it, I just fucking love Dalton.
You did say The Living Daylights wouldn't be top 5. You've clearly had a rethink.
I have, and it's just I sat down and think, and it's the heart. To quote Woody Allen, the heart wants what it wants, and for me, Daylights is a top 5 Bond film. And I know that probably makes me a Dalton fanboy because I haven't even got to license yet.
We will get there in a minute with me, but and I'll explain it when we get to the next one. The Living Daylights is a top 5 Bond film that just slips out for me, just because there have been so many Bond films. This could top a list quite happily.
Yeah, and it's just a great, solid effort, and I always find enjoyment from it. I think also, again, it hit me at a right age where I was at a young age, but I was old enough to kind of watch it consistently enough on telly or when I taped it on VHS. It hit me at a time where oh shit, Dalton did another one, and I watched that, and I think it's got the right mix for me as nostalgia, fan favourite. It's got my favourite Bonds. It hits so many right marks for me, and I when I think of a perfect Bond film, I think this is up there. Living Daylights is number 5.
Conversely, my number 5 is GoldenEye. It's brought Bond out of the doldrums for the 6 years. Although Bruce does fine in the role. Sean Bean has one of the bloodiest deaths in all of Bond. Spoiler alert: he dies. I think you count all the films he doesn't die in on one hand.
His character looks very promising in Game of Thrones, though.
It does.
Yeah,
that's true.
I'm sure that's going to go well. I imagine he probably wins the Game of Thrones at the end, and he gets a big shoulder carry. And that's how it ends.
Well done, you now own the Iron Throne. And that's come from somebody who's never seen it.
Oh, sorry, have I just spoiled Game of Thrones?
That's another discussion for another day. No, as I say, I think even though Tomorrow Never Dies was my first one in the cinema. Obviously, the first one in the series, and for me, being child of the 90s, Brosnan is my Bond as it was, particularly if you grew up in the 60s, and obviously it was Connery. If you grew up in the 70s, and obviously it was Roger. But it's nostalgia, rose tinted glasses, but I still think this film zips along. There's great chemistry between all the cast. It's just managed to bring Bond back from the brink, really. So I'm really grateful for this film. So yeah, that's why it's at my number 5.
Really, really important film in this series. There's no doubt. And I don't whilst I don't understand people putting it top, we're talking shape flavors here. I mean, I put it in the top 10. You've just about sneaked it into the top 5. I don't really have a problem with that. I mean, I get why people would love this film. It just has problems, but you cannot understate the importance of GoldenEye. If GoldenEye had failed, it would have been game over.
Yeah, easily.
Yeah, and again, it's like nostalgia always kind of has, you know, I mean, when we look at these films, we always think of nostalgia. Even our favourites, as great as they are, maybe critically, it's nostalgia that wins our hearts over. So it's.
But the thing with GoldenEye, Chris, is that there's no other film like it. That say Spectre had come out and flopped. I mean, the reviews weren't great, but imagine they'd been really toxic, like 10% on Rotten Tomatoes sort of business, and it had done an opening weekend half of what they expected, and then dropped 80% in its second week, and so on. What would have happened is the next Bond film would still come out. You might have a different Bond. It might sort of switch to, even if Craig wanted to do it, they might start thinking, okay, well, he's too expensive if we're going to get that sort of return, and we need to have a rethink. And the next one might come out and be a bit more Roger Moore-like or something. I don't know. But the fact is, a flop Bond film now would do fuck all to damage the series. It might change direction a little bit, but there'll still be a Bond film. GoldenEye is the first one since probably From Russia with Love that was shit or bust. And so its success cannot be overstated. It's a really important Bond film. My number 5 is From Russia with Love. Now, I wanted to put this higher, and I almost feel like it belongs higher, but I've had to balance enjoyment and quality. On the quality side of things, as good as it is, it's still got bits that drag. You could cut that whole gypsy camp stuff. It's too long. But it proved lightning could strike twice, because Dr. No was a low budget sort of quickie. But when I look at favourites, I don't enjoy it as much as maybe I should. When we went to review them, I thought From Russia with Love was very good. I admired it greatly. I enjoyed it. I mean, it's not like a Skyfall where I admire it but don't love it. I do love this, but it's not... Well, we'll talk about it when we get to my next choice. But I couldn't put it any higher, even though if I was ranking purely on quality, it might go a touch higher. But yeah, From Russia with Love's at number 5 for me.
It's getting to the point where it's like, it's like it is like choosing your babies as well. It's like, it's like getting painful.
It is now, yeah.
My number 4, I think everyone knows my top 3 really going in, so there's only one left. It's a Stonehall classic. It's effortlessly enjoyable. It's confident. It's nice and shiny. It basically gave birth to what we know the Bond series to be. It is Goldfinger. It's easy to kind of like dismiss, Goldfinger for its kind of for being the stereotype Bond film, in a manner of speaking. But the truth is, when you sit and watch it, it's so goddamn classy and so goddamn entertaining, and it's just so easily watchable. That's no mean feat. And I know we've dissed Guy Hamilton a lot over the years, but at the end of the day, he gave us one of the best in the franchise, and hats off to Guy Hamilton. He gave us Goldfinger.
Well, I've also put Goldfinger at number 4. It was a bit of a toss-up. When we reviewed them and we got to the end of Connery and we ranked Connery, I put Goldfinger ahead of From Russia with Love. But it was kind of an interim thing. I thought, I haven't revisited much, but I did revisit From Russia with Love before we ranked these, because I thought, are you sure you don't want to put this ahead of Goldfinger? And there's also a bit of a cliche that non-Bond fans tend to put it top or near the top. So you'll see like Entertainment Weekly type articles where Goldfinger will be number 1. And it's a bit of a cliche that Bond fans don't tend to sort of rank it as high as the general public. And there are things wrong with it. Structurally, Bond has way too much success against Goldfinger early in the film. And then the bits of the film where he's supposed to be figuring it out, he's stuck in a cell doing nothing. But it's iconic, and I said at the time, it's the time capsule film. It's the Bond film. Doesn't make it the best Bond film, but it's the Bond film. It is the one. And I have a better time with it by and large, certainly in later viewings, than I have with From Russia with Love. It's not actually my favourite Connery. My favourite Connery is Dr. No. But I can't argue it's better than this. This film's terrific. So at number 4 for me also is Goldfinger.
Me 3 is also my number 4 position.
Oh God, we've all put it.
I think our top 3 is going to look vaguely similar. No, it's, yeah, just literally just to echo what you guys said, it gave birth to the Bond genre for me anyway. Yeah, so I managed to kind of meet Guy Hamilton before he passed, and he's just a thoroughly lovely man. Lots of interesting stories to tell.
I've just realised. I'm sorry to interrupt. I've just realised me and Chris are going to have the top 6 the same, just in a slightly different order. But okay, go on.
Yeah, it's going to happen, isn't it? So
I know it is.
But definitely no. So it's a classic movie. You got Shirley Bassey belting out that score. Amazing score. Memorable characters, memorable villain, memorable henchman, an odd job. Pissigro is like the most memorable one goal ever. And Sean Connery again, he doesn't. It's a bit rubbish in this film. He doesn't do much, and most of it being captured.
The character he's not.
Oh no. Generally he's not. No, obviously not. No, generally not. No, but yeah, just I love it. It's a classic. Regardless of it being one film or not, just as a film, it's just generally a classic. It's
just such a swaggering performance from him as well. It really is. Yeah, really, really impressed with it.
And we've lost 2 people this year from it, haven't we? We've got like Burt Kwok and Guy Hamilton.
Oh.
Yes, yeah, we have.
Makes me wonder who's next.
It worries me because we're only in July as we record this.
So 2016 has been like the year of celebrity deaths. What's going on?
Yeah, form a protective cordon around the older Bonds, please.
Mm.
Not even the older Bonds, because we've lost a few youngsters this year in terms of the general, acting community and stuff. Yeah, it's been very sad, but yeah, Goldfinger is the Bond film that you'd hand to someone who says, "What's that Bond series about?" You just would, because it's a bit older, it's got a bit classic feel to it.
It says it all.
It is. It tells you what the Bond series is, and it's iconic.
So we get to the top 3 now.
Oh God, I have Casino Royale at number 3. Just flipping Goldfinger. Oh.
Okay.
Well, just because it rebooted the franchise, and it's a culturally important film for that reason alone. Daniel Craig, I think the whole production team behind it has done so much for the series, bringing it into like the modern day. He's been there for 10 years now, so that says a lot as well. But yeah, it's no surprise. I don't think I really enjoy this movie. I can't. Words fail me.
It's just that fucking good.
Yeah, that's the word. That's what I want to say.
Well, it's so good that it's slightly controversial. You've put it at 3.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And that's perfect. That's incredible. I mean, anything top 3 is amazing.
But then number 1 and number 2 are going to be expected. So.
Oh, I know from process of elimination.
What it's going to be.
And I think I know what order they're in as well. But it is such a mark of quality. Yeah, a fantastic film, fantastic piece of work.
So I think our 3, Dave, are pretty much the same, aren't they?
I don't know if they're in the same order. My number 3 is License to Kill. License to Kill, if I was marking purely favourite, purely what order of I want to put them into my Blu-ray player, this would be at number 2. I can't argue it's a better film than most of what's around it, though, because, I could probably put it ahead of Goldfinger. I'm not even sure about From Russia with Love. But, wait, there are too many people and bouffant hair and all the rest of it. This film has a few little issues, but they're minor, and it's almost a minor reboot in itself. It's a little bit of a reinvention of not a reinvention, but stretching what they've done with the character in terms of new locations. It's a very gritty performance. I think, as I said before, the first time I got it with Dalton was footage of him in that bar starting to fight, elbowing somebody, and I thought, my God, this guy's really got it. We joked about the homoerotic elements, but him and Sanchez have a wonderful chemistry. They sell us that he cares about Felix and Della. Again, all jokes aside, it's beautiful to look at. It's got one of the best lead performances in the series. It tries to do something new. Watching it again recently, and I watch it quite a lot, I've never been a Robert Brown fan, but Robert Brown's got wonderful chemistry with Timothy Dalton, actually. And I would include The Living Daylights in that. I think those two play off each other quite nicely. and I do buy him and Pam, not as being in love or anything, but I think they've got a good rapport between them. But the biggest thing, forget everything I just said and talking about score and cinematography and everything else. Biggest selling point for this film for me is, if you said to me now, very late in the evening, stick a Bond film on, this one would go in. I love it. License to Kill at number 3.
Yeah, I can only just repeat what Dave just said. That is basically what makes me put it at top 3. It's like, I think it's probably the one I've watched the most. I think ever since I've watched it, Night Living Daylights, it's just kind of grown with me all the time. I didn't realise it was my favourite. It's one of my favourites at the time. It just became one of my favourites, just by natural decree. And you can poke holes in it, but and maybe the whole the kind of like having to kind of been told that Timmy Dalton's Bond was rubbish sort of makes you want to go, no, fuck you, you're wrong. And it's becoming even more evident that it's just not true. I generally, this pretty much sums up the way I want my Bond to be, and I think Dalton, even though he's only ever had 2 Bonds, I think he's kind of crept in as my actual Bond, my Bond of choice. Everyone's got their favourite for whatever reason, but I think Dalton is my favourite Bond. He's the actor who I prefer to see on screen, and his whole demeanour and performance as Bond, literal or not, I think it just sums up how I see the character, or how I. And I think it's also a shame that Dalton never did more action films, because he's really good at it.
The thing is, he was at his peak. He's in his 40s here, and for action films at the time, maybe, I suppose Stallone was in his 40s, so was Schwarzenegger at this point. The thing is, this is an era where they were all like He-Man figures. I mean, this is an era of like steroids and oiled muscles. And as much as you still have that now, there is still room in the marketplace now for like a Liam Neeson and an older guy, and but you go back to like Rocky IV, Commando, all of those films of this era, they were all ridiculously roided out, and Dalton didn't fit in with that, particularly as his Bond was still smoking. But yeah, there is no doubt he does action nearly as good as the guy I'm about to talk to next.
Well, I think that there was a chance we had do things like Lethal Weapons and Die Hards that weren't quite. There was more stepping away from more. Like,
that's a good point, actually. I did forget about Die Hard. Yeah.
So, but then again, the public didn't take to Dalton at the time, which is a shame. I think, as you say, we talked about this actually experimented and wanted to be something different. And it's a shame it didn't take off, because obviously I'd love to see like another few films with this tone, but hey ho. But end of the day, License to Kill, god damn it, is one of my favourite Bond films. It is number 3. So, top 2, guys. I'm interested. Actually, I might be being thick, but I generally can't think of what Becca's top number 2 is.
I know. I've got them placed in. I know what they are. I know what she hasn't said so far. Becca, put Chris out of his misery. What's your number 2?
Rush of Love, of course.
Oh. Let's see.
Well, it's going to be one of 2 things, wasn't it?
Well, I completely forgot. I couldn't remember what you've not said. I was like, oh my god, what the hell? Anyway, okay. From Rush of Love, what is it? I didn't realise you loved it that much. Maybe I've just forgotten.
It was one of the first movies I saw one of them I saw on Blu-ray as well, and it looks fantastic, as if it was made today. There's a proper, you've got a look at Cold War kind of like spy thrillers. So you've got Harry Palmer series. It's like that. It's a really good old-fashioned spy thriller. And that's one of my all-time favourite movies and all-time favourite Bond movies as well. So just deservedly number 2 spot. I'm
glad someone put it higher than me, because I thought, Dave did put it higher than me as well. But
yeah, well, I did. To be honest, last time I ranked the Bond films, it was at number 3 actually. My top 2 has been my top 2 for a while. At number 2, Casino Royale. Frankly, we talked about favourite Bonds in the opening intro episode we did. I cannot split my 3 favourite Bonds now, to be honest with you. I would put Connery, Dalton, and this guy pretty even for different reasons. Nobody does close-in combat like Daniel Craig. Nobody quite does intensity like Daniel Craig. And he is the most lethal of all the Bonds. Not in terms of outcome, because frankly they made Moore and Brosnan Supermen, so one punch they'd knock people out. Well, Daniel Craig's not like that, but you do believe he is a lethal peak agent, and this film gives us a great economy of action. It characterizes the man through action. The dialogue all works. People talk about this as a dour Bond film. It's not. It's really funny, but it's just there aren't many jokes in it. It's just all the jokes do land. It's stylish. It looks great. It's one of Daniel Kleinman's best sequences. It's David Arnold's best score. It's got the second best Bond girl in the series. I'll explain why she's second and not first in a moment. It's got one of the best leading performances in the series. It's got a great ally that does remind you of a Kerim Bey or a Draco in Mathis. This film is virtually perfect. It's virtually flawless. And the little reveal is actually the last time I ranked these, Casino Royale did go top, but it only went top briefly. It's the only time I've ever felt that way. It is strictly number 2, though, and it is, in a quality respect, the top 2 are miles ahead of everything else. At number 2 for me, Casino Royale.
I kind of have to agree with you on everything you said, but I will follow up, because I think it'll come up quite nicely now. My number 2 is On Her Majesty's Secret Service. I will say, I think we will probably end talking about On Her Majesty's, so I will just pick up what you say. Casino Royale is my favourite, and I think while we're doing this podcast, I think I had it there just on pure principle and just on sheer quality. I do love it, but at the end of the day, I love Casino Royale more. I think, and it goes back to what you're saying with License to Kill. If I had to put in a Bond film, I'd put in Casino Royale over On Her Majesty's. I'd probably put License over Majesty's, but then again, I'm not going to say On Her Majesty's is better is a lesser film than License to Kill. But yeah, I think for me, when I did that double bill, I remember messaging you guys talking about it, and Dave was getting a little bit excited for me. I was just like, yeah, I think I prefer Casino Royale. And just for everything that Dave said, it's just pretty much my favourite Bond film. It just always enjoyable, gives me exactly what I want for a Bond film. Daniel Craig couldn't be better. It is my number 1. But now we're going to talk about the very, very close call, which I think is everyone's number 1, On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
I put Tracy above Vesper simply because she throws in some action as well. She's damaged. She is complex. There are things we never find out about Tracy. I do think Diana Rigg is phenomenally good in the role. She sells me that Bond would fall in love with her. Whereas even Vesper, I don't quite buy it in quite the same way, even though it's extremely good. It's the prettiest film in the series. I don't understand people who say Skyfall, it's washed out in digital. It's the prettiest film in the series. It's John Barry's best score. It's the best leading lady. It's the only time Blofeld's been done even remotely half decent.
I agree with that.
It's just got everything. And the biggest knock on it tends to be Lazenby. I think it suits the youngest Bond because he makes mistakes based on being a young man, like he's putting his libido first and stuff like that. But it has that gut punch ending that you can never do a second time. And as much as Casino Royale sells it to me, it's the second time we've seen it because we saw it with Tracy. I think it's the most beautiful film in the series. I wish Peter Hunt had stayed and done a run of them with Lazenby, and they'd crafted, 3, 4, or 5 between them. It was a closer call than I ever expected, simply because I watched Casino Royale and Majesties again fairly recently, and I watched Majesties with somebody else, and they weren't that into it. They didn't dislike it, but they weren't as into it. And I'd had such a great viewing of Casino Royale. So they are close in quality, but the fact this film is so gorgeous and it sounds so wonderful pushes it over the top. So my favourite, and it will probably always be my favourite, is On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Yeah, I'll just be repeating what everyone else has said, really, to be honest. It's got everything. You've got the action, you've got the drama, got the romance as well for the ladies. So it's, I think on JBR recently, they're saying, okay, so if a lot of Bond is very obviously a male-oriented genre, and I don't know many other, girls or women who are Bond fans. But it's like, if you're a guy and if you're a Bond fan, you want to get the other half into Majesty's. This is the way into Bond films. This is the way to go.
We'll get the totty on board when we move on to Star Trek.
Going further and further into nerd.
Turn around.
Okay.
But no, definitely, I think Majesty's is a film that really has it all. I mean, George looks great. He was the youngest in the role. And definitely. I think when Tracy is shot at the end, it's Bond really feels it. Whereas like when Vesper dies, Bond's just like, bitch is dead. Screw that.
I don't know.
On to the next one.
His art out after she's died.
Well, no, it's still sad, but at the same time, but like it, you really feel it.
Puts the armor back on.
Well, that's it exactly. And just like, well, that's it. But this, should had history gone another way, and had George done like Diamonds, a proper revenge thriller, then he would have kind of been more hard-edged about it, I think. But no, I just bloody love this film. So there we are.
Yeah, I mean, it's not much to say. I mean, great score. It looks great. Got the best Bond girl. It's got a great debut for a leading man in the role as Bond. Shame he didn't stay on doing other and proved everyone wrong, but hey.
No, but he grew that beard, didn't he? And thought, no, bigger than Jesus.
Probably up there, one of the best directed of the Bond series. It takes chances. My favourite.
Great score, groundbreaking score as well.
My favourite Blofeld. It has some really nice stylistic touches that are just kind of that haven't been done in a Bond film before, that really do set it up on site. And more importantly, it sells a love story, and it probably sells it more than any of the Bond films. And as much as I put Casino Royale above it, it sells it better than Casino Royale. Not that Casino Royale does a bad job of it; it comes a close second to it. But
I buy Bond falling for Vesper just as much as I buy Bond falling for Tracy, but I buy Tracy falling for Bond more than I buy Vesper falling for him.
And that's kind of what I'm saying. It's not. You're not saying neither of them work. They do both really work.
They both work.
But if you,
Dora's doing it at the behest of other people.
Yeah.
I mean, she's doing it obviously because of Draco, and Vesper's doing it because of Spectre, obviously. But it's like, well, I kind of buy. Personally, I buy Tracy more. That's no bad on either green though. So.
And I think for me, it's because I think we have like the scene where we actually see Bond literally like love hearts and eyes almost kind of thing. It's like, well, just that light bulb hits and like, shit, I love this woman. Where
that sequence set to We Have All the Time in the World is just beautiful. I mean, there are some questionable outfit choices, but generally it's a lovely sequence.
Yeah, it's an awkward time in fashion, but but it is what it is. I mean, it's got some great action in it. I mean, it's the first half is pretty much all story set up story, and then for the last like hour or so, it's just like pure just action, running, chasing. It's a bold film, and I'm glad it's getting repraised the way it has. I mean, to think that I hadn't even heard of this film growing up, and I was a huge Bond fan when I was young. So I was even surprised that, like, who's this guy? Oh, it's George Lazenby. What? He played Bond?
Who?
It was I can understand from a young person's perspective it not being instantly being drawn to it like the others, but
And as much as it's been reappraised, I still say to like people now who are like more casual fans, not non-fans, but people who like Bond a bit, and I'll say my favourite's the Lazenby. They'll go, fuck off, really? And I go, have you seen it lately? No, I haven't. I saw it once years ago. It's still, I wouldn't say it's best kept secret, but it's still a Bond fan's delicacy.
Mm. I think. I mean, I don't know where does it rank on the general list still. I mean, is it? It's
normally fairly high.
Yeah.
It is normally fairly high, but there are still a significant number of people out there who don't really know it.
So there you are. So, Casino Royale, my number one, and yours is On Her Majesty's. So, yeah.
Oh dear.
Well, that's that.
Well,
done and dusted.
I kind of feel like David Tennant saying, "I don't really want to go."
We can write and shoot a Bond film by next week. We can review it.
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry,
get
Get me Craig on the phone now.
That's it. You never know. The next Bond movie, there's going to come out, might just blow all our socks off, and they'll be like, "Oh, this is the best Bond ever." You never know.
One of the reasons we wanted to do short series in between, because it gives you a time to sort of get over what you've just reviewed. I'd hate to be 4 episodes into Star Trek before I get over the fact we're not doing Bond anymore. You know what I mean? I will miss this. This has been our identity. This is what we are. We've been a Bond podcast. Most of our listeners are Bond fans, and it's been wonderful to do. It's the whole reason we got together. We wanted to review the Bond films.
I really enjoyed it.
I mean, I've really enjoyed it, but I'm kind of looking forward to getting onto other films and adding our critical analysis and smut to.
Well, we will review Star Wars, and to quote Obi-Wan Kenobi, we've taken our first step into a larger world. I'm sure there are plenty of other series that lead themselves nicely to dick and fart jokes.
And if it doesn't, we'll cram one in there. It's fine.
We will desperately force.
We'll find one.
Situations.
Dave will make one up.
I can't wait. I don't know how we're going to do that when it gets to like Sophie's Choice.
Oh dear.
Well, so that's it for Bond, folks. What are we going to do now?
Where can you find us on social media? Chris, where can we find you?
You can find me at Cinematronics on Twitter, and you can find this podcast and my other podcasts I do on cinematronics.co.uk.
You can find me at the Pasty Kid 1976 on Twitter.
You can find me on Twitter at RVMovies, or you can find us on Twitter at Expect Us to Talk. Email us, expectusttalk@gmail.com, or on facebook.com/expectusttalk. Oh, grab your fedora hats, grab your whip, but watch out for snakes, because we're going to delve into the world of Indiana Jones. Your favourite movie podcast, Do You Expect Us to Talk, will return with Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh, before we go, the Honor Blackman joke. We keep getting asked. Can I tell people now?
Nah, I think you should leave it. I think you should leave it sort of secret.
But people are going to complain, aren't they? I did say, I said on Twitter I'd mention it. Oh, fuck. Right. Okay, Honor Blackman is 91 now. She was 90 at the point where I told this joke. And basically, all I was trying to say was, because she's 91, if you meet her in person, there's a very, very good chance that what will happen will be...
No, Dave, don't do it.
Does